to click in. So if you and you should be set, ready to go.
All right, thanks, Colleen. Hi, Bob. It looks like you're still muted, so feel free to click that button anytime you like. Thank you for your interest in joining the planning board. I don't know if you've ever seen any of our interviews before, but they're pretty easy. Basically, we ask first off, what inspired you to seek this position? What qualities or skills do you think you'll bring to the position that'll help it do its work?
Sure. Well, so my background is as an architect and urban designer, community planner, which I've been doing for the last 20 years or so. And, so I feel like that's something that I would bring to the board, and that would certainly be useful to the board. And I'm also, I guess, very simply just someone who's raising children in this community. My kids are at Peacedale Elementary. And so I really have a reason to invest in this community's future. And so that's really what's motivating me here to kind of see if I can make a contribution through what I have a skill set already in.
Okay. So I'll open the floor up to other members of the council to ask Bob questions. Do you have any?
I can keep talking if you like.
So I just have one question. Communities are you a New Englander? Have you been, what's your background?
Well, I have an interesting background. So I was born and raised overseas. My parents met in North Africa, where I was born, and I moved to the US really more permanently in the 90s when I went to university. So I studied architecture and lived on the West Coast for several years, and I lived in Boston during graduate school. Then after that, I was in Paris for 6 years, working as an architect there and in Morocco. And now I'm in Rhode Island, which is not a place I have roots. Obviously, I don't have very deep roots anywhere, but my wife's family is from here. Her family goes back. I think my children are the 11th generation to be South County residents. So her family is deeply invested in this town. And so when we decided to move back to the US, we moved back here as a place to put down those roots.
Cool. Other questions?
Bob, how long have you lived in South Kingstown, and do you envision yourself living here, for the next decade or so, or longer than that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Like, obviously my background is one where we've moved around a lot. But, as we had children overseas and started to think about what our priorities are as adult humans in this world, we realized we needed to find a place to really put some roots down, raise our kids. And so, yeah, we do see ourselves being here for the long term. And that's why children up, because we've been happy with the South Kingstown School District, and we plan to keep them there and in the town.
Any other questions from council members?
I don't have a question per se, but I do. You're part of the another committee, correct? Currently?
Yeah, I'm a volunteer on the sustainability subcommittee for the South Kingstown School Committee.
Okay.
I think I got the order
yeah,
right.
I think I was getting those confused before because I kept getting it confused with the sustainability committee on the town side. I didn't realize the school department had, or school committee had, their own sustainability committee at that point. But I think you put a lot of thought into the information that you shared, and it was well put together. So I appreciate that.
In addition to that sustainability subcommittee of the schools, have you had experience on boards, nonprofit boards or boards similar to this?
I haven't been on a municipal board before, but I've served on the boards of nonprofits. We started, I think after the tsunami that hit South Asia, we started a nonprofit in Seattle called Architects Without Borders. And I was on the founding board of that and a board of a couple local organizations in Seattle. Since then, since we've been here, I haven't been able to engage except for the Sustainability Committee.
All right, any final questions for Bob? Sorry to rush you through this, Bob, but we've had our time eaten up by interviews over the past few meetings. So thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. I do anticipate we'll be making a decision, if not at this meeting, at the next one. So we should be letting you know soon.
Great.
Thank
you very much, everybody.
Have a good night. All right.
You too.
Thank you.
And next, let's see. We have Robin Potier. I'm gonna go turn a light on in here so I don't look like I'm in the dark.
Okay, but you can hear me now.
We can hear you now, Robin.
Okay, you can't see
cannot-
me. But, yeah, hold on. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I see you. So welcome. Thank you for submitting yourself to our questions here.
Thanks for the invitation.
If you saw that last interview, basically the first question is, what inspired you to seek this position on the planning board? What qualifications do you think will really help you add to it?
Sure. So I'm inspired for several reasons. One is that I believe that people owe it to their community to provide service. And I'm at the right age in my life. My children are grown where I can donate the time and do a good job. I think that's important. I was a Girl Scout leader for South Kingston for 12 years. I took my girls from first grade to college, a few gold awards in there. I think that type of commitment to community and setting good examples and bringing people along and the thoughtful processes is what we all should be doing. I think that, having taught, I've been teaching for over 20 years. So I've got a lot of experience in listening, and I've got a lot of experience in explaining different perspectives and helping people share their thoughts and think things through. I think that that's going to be a contribution I can bring. I also run an Envirothon Club, which is a state competition where I teach young people to understand planning and good citizenship by understanding where we focus on 4 main categories: forestry, aquatics, soils, and wildlife. And then they compete for a North American competition. We came in second this year, so that was a good year. We did it virtually. So I think that, it's really important for me that people bring all different perspectives together and make good choices. As my degree is in chemistry, and as a chemist, I like analyzing data, and I like analyzing the whole situation. I like listening to people. I have owned my home here in South Kingston for 25 years. I raised 3 children here. I hope that my grandchildren enjoy South Kingston. And I really want to see South Kingston shaped in this place that we loved. The reason we came to South Kingston, I'd like to see it only get better. And it has a lot of potential for being a great place. Let's see, I did not jot down a few things in case I couldn't remember everything I wanted to talk about here. I guess I think I hit on what I think, you know, I think I would be a fair component of the board. I don't think I have an agenda.
Okay, well, I think that's a great start. Any questions for Robin from the other council members?
Robin, this is Debbie Kelso. Do you see any unique planning challenges? Have you noticed? You've been here a long time. Anything you see as a problem or anything you see as a success?
Well, you know, I've been a member of the South Kingston Land Trust for about 25 years probably, and I see that as a great success. I see our housing situation as a difficult spot. I talk to a lot of people, you know, and I should mention that might be something I also bring, is that I like to reach out to people of different professions and get their opinions on things. I have friends who are architects. I have friends that are environmental scientists. I have friends that are builders. You know, so I think I like to hear everyone's perspective. I think that our housing issue is a serious one. I think that's going to take a lot of work. I think that people have opinions before they've really thought about the bigger picture of housing. I'd like to see us do something good with housing. And make the values of our homes. You know, I want South Kingston to still be this great place to live. Yeah. And I think diversity is a major component of greatness.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's tough with this psychological distance of the Zoom, right? As a teacher, I finished the last 10 weeks of school doing this, so.
Yeah.
I still haven't mastered lighting, but.
I don't think there's any way to master this format, but at least it gets us through. Any other questions for Robin?
I have no questions. I appreciate you putting your name in for the role. It's good to see people getting involved in our community and giving their time and effort.
Thank you.
All right. Any last questions? Seeing none, thank you, Robin. I think you have great qualifications, so you know, we have a lot of great candidates. We will probably be making a decision tonight. If not tonight, the next meeting, and we'll be letting you know shortly.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Have a good evening. I think I see Harold Thomas. And Harold, you might need to unmute yourself, and there you are.
How's that?
Very good. So I don't know if you were watching before, but basically we sort of lead off all these interviews with the same basic question: what inspired you to run for this position on the planning board, and what qualifications do you bring to the board that'll really help it do its job?
Qualifications I have, I've been a lifelong resident. I was actually born at Kent County Hospital. I lived in South Kingston my entire life. I raised 5 children. My last 2 are at the University of Rhode Island. I'm a University of Rhode Island graduate. Right now I live off of South Road. I intend on staying here. So all my kids are grown. The last 2 are in college. So I'm at the point now in my life when I started having a family, I invested a lot of time in charitable organizations like the Lions Club. I was a recording secretary for about 5 years. I headed up the Cancer Children for probably 6 with Lou McGreen. God rest his soul, was a great man. A lot of the great people in this town are no longer here. My main concern is I want to see this town remain as it is. I've owned a business now. This is my 30, so in 87, I graduated. So 33 years I've been in South Kingston on Old Tower Hill Road. I plan on staying here until I retire, maybe after that. The only thing that's really alarming me now is my children. They're having a hard time staying here. As Robin said, housing's a very big problem. What I bring probably to the council, the planning board, is I'm very structured. I'm an accounting major. As Rory will tell you, we think a certain way. I look at things, I research, I like to talk to people, I like to find out about different issues. I want to keep the town solid. I plan on staying here. I would love to have my kids come back here. Right now, those jobs aren't there when you start out. I help them the best I can. I have, unfortunately, one's moved to Connecticut because the jobs just aren't here for them. So, and being said too, being in business, being in South Kingston, our business is a collision center. We do service. We have a gas station. I don't know if you're familiar with our location, but most of my employees come from out of town because they basically can't afford to live here. So I would like to see affordable housing in this town. And I kind of got interested in the planning board. I own property in North Kingston, and they have a big thing now with cultured marijuana and hemp. And I own property in a part where it's farming land and it can be grown. So I was kind of interested in that whole process. Now that I have time, it's my wife and myself, my 2 dogs. The kids are doing their thing. They're moving on with their life. So it's time to give back to the town in this capacity. That's basically my feelings. And I know a few members on this council. When I put my heart and time into it, I put my heart and time into it. I'm not going to do it haphazardly. I basically would be interested in getting involved in this. I have no agenda. My family's grown. I have no kids in school systems. I do own a business. I really don't have an agenda. I just want to kind of help the town regain a little of its authenticity. A lot of that's changing. I know you have to move ahead with times. I agree with that, but this is a great town. I grew up in this town. All my kids did. They're all good people. There's a lot of good people in this town. I like to be able to see the next generation stay if they can.
Thank you. Open the floor to other council members to ask any questions they might have.
Abel Jovili. So just a comment, Harold, to start. I think that all of especially zoning and planning, we need to have balanced committees. And so I think having a business person or 2 on this committee is important to create that balance. And the comments you made, I just want to highlight the comments you made about affordable housing, or more importantly, workforce housing. What I hear from lots of business owners is what you just said. I have a number of employees, it's 10 or 12 or 20, and the majority of them come from another community because it's not affordable to stay here. So it's sort of refreshing to hear that that's a hot button for you, and you're seeing it real time. You're seeing it real life, right? You're seeing guys get out of their car and come into the shop every day from other communities, and that's frustrating because you have opportunity there. So again, I appreciate you coming forward. I think that having a voice or 2 of business on planning and zoning, I think is very important. So I thank you for coming forward.
Thank you, Joe.
So this is Debbie Kelso. You made a comment, you want South Kingstown to retain its authenticity. I'm curious at what that means to you. What does South Kingstown's authentic self look like to you?
My vision of South Kingston at one time, I'll just give you, for instance, when I was young, I could walk anywhere in town. I wouldn't have to worry about anything. Things are changing, as you can tell in the environment today. A lot of things are changing. The character of South Kingston's changing. I don't know if it's because of the old timers are dying. It's hard to explain. It's a very congested community. And being in a neighborhood I live in, a lot of people aren't vested in this community, and I'm not holding it against them. It's in my neighborhood, we've been there since 2004. I moved to South Road because we lived off of the special management district you guys are all aware of on Albro Lane. And at one point they were talking about putting a service road through there, and I had 5 kids. Oldest was 9, youngest was 3. So we decided to move. So I was probably the 12th house at Potter's Farm. And I think I am 2 or 3 of the last originals. So there's such turnover in the community. And going back, things will never go back the way they were. But when I was invested in a Lions Club, we had the Seafood Festival. People worked in this town. They spent money in this town, and it was a community. A lot of things, people are in and out. A lot of change, as everybody knows. Will it go back to the way it used to be? No, but I would like to see, for instance, we have 17 other people working here in this that we provide a family for. At one time, all our families were together. Now they're from all over the state. So, it would be nice to have that, that community feeling with your workforce. We're a family business. It's just everybody I entertain. I had 2 job openings now. I can't hire anybody from around here. And with all the incentives the government's coming, these are $40,000 jobs, and they can make more staying home. So that's the problem that we're entertaining right now. And it's the travel. It's the Rhode Island mentality. Nobody wants to drive 10 minutes. For people that have been with me 20 years, they're driving from Cranston, Coventry, Situate. So I would love to have people that could afford to live down here and sustain and spend their money in the community. I would like to see more of that to come back in this area, because we do need service businesses, as you can attest to. Eventually there are fewer and fewer shops, even in our industry, in the collision industry. There's 2 shops that closed in this area. So one was South County Collision in Narragansett, and the other one was Sherman's Auto Body on Route 2 in Charleston. We can't get a workforce down here. Years ago, I remember pushing a broom, and there were 10 young men and women, a couple of women, that would push brooms to get a job to pump gas, which I can't even hire until they're 18 now because of the laws. And they would go and become mechanics or body men, or trades or plumbers or electricians. We're not seeing that down here. So I think we need to, that might be one of my points I would work on, is affordable housing for like the working class. Because it's a great community down here. I would not want to move anywhere else. We looked, and I love South Kingston.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council members?
Hey, Hal, I just want to, say
Hey,
hello
Rory.
and acknowledge my appreciation for you putting your hat in the ring for the planning board. I think you share a similar concern that a lot of us do as far as affordable housing. It's certainly a challenge for those people in the mid to late 20s or early 30s to begin a family or start a career in this area. So it's something that we'll be continuing to focus on through our term and hopefully beyond that. And we appreciate you having that concern, because the planning board is a big part in resolving that issue and presenting solutions to those issues. So just want to acknowledge our appreciation toward your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Hal. This is Brian DeCruz. Just had a quick question. Affordable housing being one of your hot buttons. I'm assuming you've given it some thought. Any ideas of what we could do in our town a little bit differently?
I'm thinking structured housing, not affordable housing in the point. The younger people, we need to get them out of the basements of the families. And that's the hardest part because the jobs that come in, they spend their years at college, they're up to their heads in debt. And as parents, we all want to help them. I consider, I mean, it was a great idea, especially in this area. They were talking when they started doing this road about this area. So say, for instance, I decide to close the garage, the gas station, and I wanted to have, let's say, shops on the first floor. And, you know, Rory's an accountant, and say Rory wants to start his own practice on the second floor, maybe apartments on the third floor. It's a place to start to get them in this area. Once they spend money and their jobs are down here where they can afford to, then they can buy houses. I don't think the idea of just building, you know, $400,000 or $500,000 houses, it's very attractive for people from New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut to come in here, and that's quite a deal. I have a lot of friends that live in New York and New Jersey, and they say Rhode Island's the best deal around. And unfortunately, if you raise a family, I don't see the commitment anymore like there used to be. I've raised my family. I stayed here. I'd love to have my kids stay here. One of my sons is off to law school in the fall. He's going to Roger Williams. He's not going away. He's committed. He loves Rhode Island. So they love this area and they love to stay here. So I think that's part of you can kind of phase them. Condos is another way to phase it, make it affordable. I'm just like, I'm on South Road, and I just, that property sold, and I'm just watching 3 houses here, 4 houses there. I go up Curtis Corner Road. There's 4 houses right before the middle school. I just see like a lot of houses going up right now without bringing into concern affordability. I don't know how much the houses are. I don't go on the real estate blurb, but you know, if I was on the planning board, I obviously would start looking at that because I'm not looking to move and I use my resources elsewhere. But that's one way I could see that people could move into this area that were in the workforce. You know, and you're also looking at different levels of income. You know, you'd have retail on the first floor, second floor, third floor. You know, everybody would profit.
Thanks, Hal. I think that's a great answer. Unfortunately, got to get to our next interviewee, but thank you for coming and talking to us and throwing your hat in the ring.
Thank you.
I expect we'll be letting you know shortly.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's bring in Susan Axelrod.
I don't know.
We can hear you, Susan. We can't see you yet. If you see that little camera down on the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, there you are.
There we go. Hi.
Hi, welcome. If you've been watching, then you probably have seen the way this goes. If you want to just tell us sort of what inspired you to seek this spot on the planning board, and also what skills and experience you bring to it.
Okay. First, thank you for allowing me to throw my hat in. This is a good opportunity for me. I have been attending planning board meetings for years. I'm very active in the Kingston community. And when anything would come up on the planning board that involved Kingston, I would go to all the planning board meetings. And then that expanded to just going to planning board meetings just sort of for the fun of it, to see what was going on in town. I'm very involved here in Kingston in my community, and with volunteers, with fundraising, and with the spirit of what's going on here in Kingston. I've been the president of the Kingston Improvement Association for 10 years. And community service is important to me. And I think that having an opportunity to become more involved in my town community would be I think I could be pretty good at this. I'm committed to this town. I love this town. We live here very deliberately. We raised our kids in this town. And I think my community service here in the village would be of benefit to the planning board.
Thank you, Susan. Questions for Susan?
Susan, this is Brian DeCruz. How are you?
Brian.
Yeah, that is all of what you said. I think that's how I met you through the Kingston Improvement.
And South Kingstown Music Boosters.
That's right.
You helped us out with it. I've been chairing the auction for 4 years. You helped us out with our auction.
But what I wanted to ask you about, it's something that's important in our town. It's something that we struggle with, is the workforce affordable housing kind of situation. How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. I looked this week on RI Living to see houses for sale in South Kingstown. And at this time, there are only 2 houses in town for sale for less than $300,000, which to me would be shocking if I was a recent graduate or an employee here in town without, I mean, you need a salary of $60,000 or better to just afford a starter home here in South Kingstown. And I think it's a very serious problem in our town. And I wonder if following COVID, if this is going to even be harder for folks who live in our town to get on their feet, especially those who haven't been working now for a number of months. And I know a number of our businesses here in town will be facing maybe different business models following the coronavirus. And I think this is going to be a challenging time to consider affordable housing for our workforce, as well as supporting our businesses here in the community. Here in Kingston, there was a number of Habitat for Humanity houses built on Old North Road, which we thought was a wonderful use of space. There have been 4 houses built here, very small cottage-sized houses on one lot here in Kingston Village. And I think the town should see or should strive for more housing of that sort to allow families to own single-family houses, but not for $300,000. I think more affordable housing here in town would be critical. I think there are a potential for apartments over businesses on Main Street, over businesses on Tower Hill Road. In different pockets of Wakefield, there could be townhouse style houses, cottage style developments where folks can live independently, but relatively inexpensively.
Thank you. And Habitat's definitely a great organization.
Yeah.
The model down here is a little bit different than they do elsewhere, but it's really because of land being so expensive. So they tend to own the land and lease it into to the homeowner. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Certainly you have some good experience with different organizations in the past, and I think that would allow you to be very good right off the bat if you get on the planning board. And I appreciate you mentioning your different thoughts as to where affordable housing or more affordable housing could be in town. I think it's important we have to think of all different options.
Right.
And some of the options you've expressed, I've heard discussion on from people within the planning board already. So I think that's great. I think that's good. And as I had mentioned with the previous applicant, it's something that we're going to continue to work on and going to have to beyond this term. It's got to be a focus for not only the council, but also the planning board to, make affordable housing a more, relevant thing in South Kingstown.
Right.
So I appreciate your remarks there, and I'm going to take that into consideration as, we make our appointment, whether that be tonight or another night. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any final questions for Susan? All right, well, thank you very much, Susan. You are welcome to stick around for the rest of the meeting, but of course, if not, we'll be letting you know shortly.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
All right, so let us, with the time we have remaining in the work session, get a look at our agenda tonight. Rob, anything you want to highlight in particular?
let me run through this quickly. Taking it from the top. 7B is a public hearing on putting stop signs in. We are accepting tonight, or have on the agenda to accept tonight, roads for the East Matunic construction, or the East Matunic development project that has been completed. This public hearing will allow us to install stop signs as they are required in that subdivision.
Hey, Rob, on that
Yes.
note, real quick before I forget, I've gotten some calls from people that stop signs have already been installed.
Okay, they need to be, the ordinance needs to be updated so that it includes those streets. We only have signs up where the council's authorized them. It may be that they're ahead of the game. I don't know how that's come to be. John's on at some point when we get to that public hearing, we can.
Right, so we'll have him talk about that because it's important. Thank you.
CDBG, there is an update here tonight. There is some late conversation today with the folks up at Rhode Island Housing. It may be possible for the project at the Housing Authority to proceed under its current authorization. You'll remember that we had talked about Rhode Island Housing being concerned that the changes to the project were such that they would have to reapply. That no longer seems to be the case. However, staff's recommendation at this point is that we proceed down both paths, that we get the resolution in place to make the application. And if conversations with Rhode Island Housing don't yield an extension on the existing grant, then we can proceed down the path that is the subject of the public hearing tonight. Kayla is here, and she will provide the council with a more complete update as we get to that public hearing. Position allocation, this is the formal designation of the relationship between positions and grades tonight. As the council will remember, funding for those positions has already been covered in the budget as approved by the council on April 27th. This is simply the allotment or the allocation of a grade position or a grade designation for each position in the town government. Communications, we may hear quite a bit tonight from folks on Water Street. I've spoken to Mike, and this is really something that we have really no control over at this point. I can provide a more extensive explanation of this as we get into the meeting tonight. But at this point, the CRMC is the only agency, the only entity that has the authority to sort of continue this discussion beyond where we've been. To this point, there's been sort of a back and forth between folks who say they own the road, folks who say that the road is a public right-of-way. We do not have the legal standing to make a determination. We're not a court of competent jurisdiction. The agency in the state that is authorized to determine whether a right-of-way has come to exist because of continued public use is the CRMC. I spoke to the interim director at CRMC this afternoon, and they are beginning the process. There will be a complete investigation. They will look into the historic use. They will track down everybody who says they've been using it. They will talk to everyone who says that it's not a public right-of-way, if there are any of those folks out there, and they will come to a conclusion about whether or not Water Street is a public right-of-way. We, the municipality, do not have the authority to make that determination. So while folks may want to make their case tonight, this is the wrong forum for them to be making their case. They really need to go before the CRMC. I committed to working with the CRMC. I told them that anything they need in terms of public records or in terms of, staff memory, anything we can provide to assist them in doing their review, we will provide. But it's ultimately going to be CRMC's decision as to whether or not the public right-of-way has come into being. It's not going to be our call.
Did they give any
Yes.
sort of timeline about how long it might take them to make a determination on that?
Other than saying that it will take time. And by that, I got the impression that this is months and it's not going to be this summer. The determination probably will be one that folks can rely on next summer, but it is not likely to be something that they will be able to put to bed this summer.
Okay.
All right. This is the acceptance of the roads over at East Matunic. New business item A, 12A is the acceptance of those roads. We have a number of purchases here. We've been putting off the purchase of a pickup truck for the parks superintendent. We've got that memorandum explaining that the vendor who we had gone out and solicited a bid from back in April has held that price. And we are now at the end of the year. Our needs have not changed. We've looked for alternatives to buying the new vehicle. There really isn't an alternative. And we've extended the offer from the vendor as long as we can. It's really now or never with regard to this particular vehicle. You know, obviously, if the council doesn't want to expend these funds, we would have to figure out something. But our biggest concern at this point is that we are not able to go ahead this summer with one person per vehicle if we don't have one more vehicle. Right now, we've got more staff than we have vehicles, which does create a potential COVID problem. And what's more, we simply have a need for a more reliable vehicle in the Parks Department. The town beach policy is being updated. The Recreation Commission reviewed the policy at their last meeting and determined that our experience to date is such that we can increase the number of parking passes. We're not putting a cap on the number of parking passes. A number of citizens have noted that it's often the case that you get to the beach in the summer and there's simply no parking, and that's just the way it is. If the community is willing to accept the fact that a beach pass is good so long as there is parking, and doesn't expect that there will absolutely certainly be a reserved spot for everyone who comes to the beach, the new policy should work just fine. We will lift the cap. New passes will be sold. I will note that we are not selling season passes to out-of-towners. We are still holding not a cap, but a rule that provides season passes only to those who reside in South Kingstown, our own property in South Kingstown. Rose Hill landfill or transfer station is up for a contract renewal. This will be the third renewal of this contract. The prices have been good, and John Schock is more than willing to share his experience with the vendor. The vendor has provided good service generally. Obviously, with any public service, you're always going to get some complaints, but generally we've been very happy with the service being provided by the vendor, and we would encourage the council to permit us to continue working with that vendor. An order of notice for a revision to the police department's standing orders relative to use of force. This is really being necessitated at this moment in time by the fact that we recently received a grant to buy and train a canine, and that dog is coming out of training soon, and we need to update our use of force rules so as to make sure that the police officers know exactly what they can and cannot do with regard to handling that dog. We have J and K the purchase of vehicles for the police department. Our policy and our union contract provide that vehicles that have more than 90,000 miles on them need to be inspected to ensure that they are safe, and need to be inspected to make sure that they've got all of the, meet all of the needs of the law enforcement officers who are put out to patrol in those vehicles. We've got a fleet that is now over 100,000 miles. These vehicles are beyond the period that we would normally replace them. And they, while they are safe and they could be put to continued use, they are going to become more expensive, because once you get to 100,000 miles plus on a police vehicle, things start to break. It's important to note that police vehicles aren't just measured, or the wear and tear on a police vehicle isn't just measured by miles. It's also the number of idling hours on the engine. The police generally idle their vehicles quite a bit. We've actually started conversations about seeing whether there's technologies that we can use to reduce the number of hours that those engines idle. But practice to date has been to run the engines much more than the mileage would indicate. So we need to replace those vehicles. The amount J&K combined is under the budget that was available, is available for the purchase of those vehicles by $5,000. So we're coming in under budget, and it is a purchase that needs to be made. L is a resolution allowing the town to continue without a budget. The town charter requires that if for any reason the budget has not been adopted by July 1, the council is authorized to extend sort of a continuing resolution and allow the town's departments to continue spending at the same rate that they spent for the previous year in that month. So we will be sticking to our July 2019 expenditures, with the exception of contract obligations that are different now than they were in July of 19. I will also note that we anticipate that the budget will be approved by voters one way or the other on July 14th. So this resolution will not actually be for the entire month of July, but only until passage of the budget by the voters on the 14th.
All right, I'm going to stop you there, Rob, because we have reached 7:30. Susan, if you wouldn't mind getting us started with the regular meeting, that would be great.
Of course. Would you like the roll call?
Well, no, first let's do the pledge to the flag, or let's gavel us in here as well.
Yes, we should.
Let me know whenever I'm ready.
Ready?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, June 22nd. The time is 7:30. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. If the town clerk would please lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now will you please take the roll?
Certainly. Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilman McEntee.
Here.
Councilman Veely.
Here.
All members are present.
Perfect. Thank you. Before we get into the meeting, I'll just remind us all that not everybody can see us on their screen. So if you can identify yourself when you're speaking, that would be helpful. For those who are attending the meeting and you are on your telephone, there are ways that you can raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone, and then to speak and unmute yourself, *6. We'll go over those instructions later on when we get to opportunities for public comment. All right, that brings us to item 4 on the agenda, the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve for A and B.
Debbie Kelso, second.
All right, we have a motion from Rory and a second from Deb. Do I see anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to item 5, the consent agenda.
Debbie Kelso, motion to approve item 5.
Rory McEntee, second.
All right, motion from Deb, second from Rory. Is there any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries as well. And that brings us to item 6, licenses. 6A is a resolution granting a Sunday sales license to PBL Inc., doing business as Liberty Wine and Spirits of 1321 Kingstown Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879. Can we do this one before we get to the public hearing, or do we have to wait? I don't know if-
You're good. You can do that first if you like.
All right. Do we?
I will bring Joe Paglia in to testify on that if you would like.
Yes, please. Thank you. And Joe, if you can see us, try to unmute yourself. If you're on a computer, there you go. And if you'd like to be seen, you can click on that little icon of the video camera on the bottom left.
Hold on. I got it right there. You guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Now why can't you see me?
Well, you have to turn on your camera, basically. So there's a little icon in the bottom left. Yeah.
There you go.
There. Welcome.
I should have this by now.
So you've applied for this license. Tell us a little bit about Liberty Wine and Spirits.
So Liberty Wine and Spirits was, as you know, formerly Patsy's. We purchased the building, the business, my brother and myself, in September of last year, 2019. And we are looking to change location to formerly Liberty Rentals. The reason, well, I guess the reason's kind of obvious, but it would give us a little bit more, it actually would give us a parking lot. We don't have one right now. We have all off-street parking. Our deliveries are off-street parking. And there really is nowhere for our customers to park right now except for on the street. The car wash has been very generous in letting us use the parking lot. But that was when Mr. Packer owned the car wash, and now I have a feeling things are going to change with the new owner as far as what he may do with his property. So that could really limit us even more. So we, I saw an opportunity to move Liberty to, I think, a more convenient, safe location to keep my business going in the right direction, I should say. And that is the whole reason behind this.
So Mike Ursillo, Joe Veely, can I ask a question here? So this agenda item is on the granting a Sunday sales license. Should I recuse on this as well as the public hearing?
Joe, to be conservative, I'd stay off of both, yes.
Sure, thank you. So I will need another recusal form, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Joe. Any questions for the applicant?
I don't know if I address Sunday sales, but I guess that goes with the whole package. Obviously, we need Sunday sales to part of the move or the transfer to the license to the new location. I may have jumped the gun a little bit on you.
Don't worry, Jeff.
This is Brian Cruz. You also have another business that you've been running successfully for a number of years. So this isn't new to you. I know you said that you bought a business back in September, but you've been in business for yourself for a long time and have done a good job. with, I believe, Arturo Joe's.
Yes. Yeah, that's, I've been running Toro Joe's now for almost 24 years. And it's something that one of your interviews just touched on was Mr. Thomas he loves his community. Kind of the same thing. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. I have 4 kids, and as Councilwoman Kelso can understand, I don't know if I can do the restaurant business for 23 more years. And it was something I've been looking into for some time. And I see that my end game. And I just want to have a little bit safer and a better location. That's all I'm looking for.
Joe, any other questions for the applicant? Do I hear a motion?
Rory Mack.
Debbie Kelso, I'll make a motion to approve item 6A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Deb, second by Rory. Any further discussion? All in favor, let's do this. No, we'll do a roll call for this one.
Council President Collins.
Aye.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Aye.
Councilman McEntee.
Aye.
Councilman Veely.
I will recuse.
Okay, and motion carries 4-0.
Very good. Thank you very much. Joe, we'll see you again in a couple seconds. But first, we do have to go to item 6B, which is a resolution granting a victualling license to the Bean on Main LLC, doing business as the Bean on Main. Subject to the Department of Health approval, application by Catherine Berkowitz.
Good evening. Jillian Kenny is the co-owner of the Bean on Main, and she will actually be speaking on behalf of the company tonight.
Very good. If you would like us to be able to see you, there's a little icon for video on the bottom left of your screen. Hello,
good evening.
Jillian.
How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining us. So tell us about the Bean on Main.
So this is kind of a passion project, both for Katie and I. I have been a baker for a long time. That's been a big passion of mine. But we really wanted to create a space with books and games and homemade in-house food and great coffee, a place for people to meet, local groups in the area, to have events and fundraisers, and a lot of things that involve our mutual background. And this seemed like just the perfect opportunity to bring all those things together.
Questions for Jillian? Tell us a little bit about your hours of operation, any specifics about sort of the menu you'll be offering, that type of detail.
Sure. We'd like to do 6 days a week to start, mainly because it will be Katie and I doing the bulk of the operation. So we would like to do Tuesday through Sunday, and our hours would be 6:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. But we would also open the space up as needed for any evening groups that would want to come in to, have meetings. I understand that space was occasionally used for some youth groups and church groups who like to meet in there, and we would like to continue that, as well as any, evening, baby showers or whatever, once we're able to, bring that many people together in one space. But to be able to take advantage of it and sort of meet the needs of the community in that way.
Very good.
Jillian, this is Brian DeCruz. I just had a quick question. I'm trying to picture where 333 is located.
Mm-hmm.
I know where 323, I think 323 is Phil's. So which spot is it?
It is the red brick building, and the space is immediately to the left of Mary Murphy's.
Okay,
And the salon is on the other side.
okay, so part of the, kind of the bell block?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Joe Veely, I'll make a motion to approve 6B.
Debbie Kelso, second.
All right, motion from Joe, second from Deb. Any further commentary? All right, seeing none, is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Good luck, you two.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item 7 on our agenda, public hearing. 7A is a public hearing relative to an application for relocation of a license to keep and sell alcoholic beverages in South Kingstown in accordance with the general laws of 1956 as amended and as follows. Class A retail liquor license. This is application for relocation of a Class A retail liquor license by PBL Inc., doing business as Liberty Wine and Spirits by Joseph Paglia, president, from 520 High Street, Wakefield to 1321 Kingstown Road, Wakefield, for the first floor sales area in accordance with a special use permit granted April 22nd, 2020 by the Zoning Board of Review and as further defined in a site plan on file in the town clerk's office. Said license is contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes and user fees and arrears to the town, and the correction of any fire code violations. Looks like we have a letter of support that's been submitted. Anything else to read into the record, Susan?
There actually have been a handful of letters of support submitted. The first one you received at your last meeting from Gregory Horton. I've also received emails from Cheryl Hall, Rick Angeli, Lance Whaley, and Sam Shabarasi, the owner of Kingston Pizza.
All right, thank you. And I see that John Kenyon has also joined us. I imagine he is the attorney for this application.
That's correct.
Good to see you again, John.
Good to see you. I hope you're all doing well.
And welcome back, Joe. Do you have any defined presentation for us tonight? I think it's pretty straightforward, but you're welcome.
I did, but Joe explained a lot of it during the Sunday sales license part of it. I would note that one of the main reasons, as Joe stated, was the lack of parking at the current site. Right now, there's no on-site parking. The new location there, it provides for 8 parking spaces, which is 2 more than required under the zoning ordinance. It also allows for a delivery vehicle, an 18-wheeler, to go on the property and to be able to turn around on the property, so they won't have to back out onto one of the main roads. As was stated, the use is permitted by special use permit in the commercial downtown zoning district, and the zoning board on April 22nd, 2020 granted the special use permit. Josh Rosen is the project engineer. He's here if there's any site questions. I was going to have Joe go over the reasons for it, but he kind of already did that, so we can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John or Joe or Josh? Council members. Josh, how does a big truck turn around in there?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Josh Rosen. Good question, Abel. The way this is, the exterior site's been repurposed. What's going to happen is a delivery vehicle will enter the site from Kersey Road, pull alongside the building in the southerly direction, and then we have left designated parking sort of vacated in the Kersey Road building frontage, so that that same vehicle can then back up in northerly and westerly direction and then exit front facing out onto Kersey Road. So all of the parking that's been designated is either behind the building for employees or out along the westerly section of the building along Kingstown Road. That's where the customer parking's going to be designated. So we've allowed for that basically accommodation coming in and out of Kersey Road, backing in front of that building to the north, and then just exiting right back on Kersey Road.
Okay.
This is Debbie Kelso. Is the footprint of the building remaining the same?
Josh Rosen, again, yes, that the footprint is exactly the same in kind.
Are there questions for the applicant from the council?
No.
All right, seeing none, it is a public hearing, so we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this agenda item? And if you are one of those people, there's a way you can, I see someone raising their hand. Greg Sweet, you could bring him into the meeting.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right. This seems to be kind of a no-brainer. It's much better location, and it's certainly going to be safer. I don't see where this should cause a problem at all with anybody. That's all I have.
Thank you, Greg. Any other public comments? If you are on your phone and you would like to make a comment, you would just press *9 to raise your hand. All right. I see no further hands raised. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Debbie Kelso, motion to close the public hearing.
This is Bryant, second.
We have a motion from Deb, second from Bryant. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, Joe, I can't really see you.
I think he's recused himself entirely from the discussion. So your vote should be, if it is unanimous, it should be 4 in favor and Joe recusing.
Yeah, I guess we should do.
Just want to do a roll call vote?
Yeah, let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Council President Collins.
Aye.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Aye.
And Councilman McEntee.
Aye.
And Councilman Veely.
So I walked away from the computer. Is this to close the hearing or to?
It's to close the hearing.
Either way, I'll recuse. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
So the motion carries 4-0 with Councilman Veely recusing.
Very good. And now do I hear a motion on 7A?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 7A.
This is Bryant. I'll second that motion.
Motion from Rory, second from Bryant. Any final discussion? All right, we'll do another roll call for this one.
Certainly. Council President Collins.
Aye.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Aye.
Councilman McEntee.
Aye.
Councilman Veely.
I recuse.
Again, the vote is 4-0 with Councilman Veely recusing.
Thank you, Susan. And that brings us to 7B, a public hearing relative to proposed amendments. I should say good luck, guys. Thank you for coming to the public hearing.
Good luck, Jerry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
7B is a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the town code as follows. Chapter 10, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Article 1 in general. Section 10-12, Boulevard and Street Stop Signs designated. This adds stop signs to East Matunic Farm Drive at Gooseberry Road, traffic to stop at East Matunic Farm Drive at the intersection, High Tides Lane and East Matunic Farm Drive, traffic to stop on High Tides Lane at the intersection, and Snug Harbor Lane and East Matunic Farm Drive, traffic to stop on Snug Harbor Lane at the intersection.
So And this is Rob Zarnetsky. Might I ask that we bring John Schock and Chief Jaber in as well?
They should be joining in just a
I
moment.
can begin.
Thank you.
Please begin.
Good evening, everyone. This is Kayla Gray, Director of Planning. So this is part one of, let's call it a two-part matter on your agenda. So this first portion is about codifying the stop signs on East Matunic Farm subdivision streets. So the subdivision, as it was approved and constructed, includes 3 cul-de-sacs. One of them is a larger one departing off of Gooseberry Road, and then 2 smaller cul-de-sacs which attach to that main one developed throughout the subdivision. Those are called East Matunic Farms, East Matunic Farm Drive, Snug Harbor Lane, and High Tides Lane. So I know there was a question in the work session about some people, and I actually have spoken to a couple myself, who pointed out that there are stop signs that already exist on the road. So I can actually speak to why we have this matter before you all tonight. So they are correct and very observant. Yes, the stop signs are out there at each of those locations. The matter is that the roads, as they were, while they were being constructed, and then until this matter before you all tonight, have been privately owned roads. And so while they are stop signs there present today, they're not added to our list of codified stop signs on public roads. So that being said, they're not there for enforcement of our police department. In the action to accept the roads as public, we also need to put the background information there and laws or ordinance present so that the police department can enforce them. So the stop signs are up today. They were not previously part of the town code because those roads were private, and still tonight, until you vote on a later agenda item, those are still private roads, but this is just to make them public so that they will become enforceable.
Does that mean that we're going to need to bring 12A forward and pass that to accept the roads before we can designate these as public stop signs?
I do think that seems sensible to designate them as codified stop signs after the roads are accepted as public. Yes, so it's up to you how you want to move on that. I'd suggest you could approve this contingent upon that, or you could just wait until later and pick this up, however you prefer.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. I don't know, does the council need to hear any more about this from John or Chief or anybody? All right, I'm not seeing any urgent questions. It is a public hearing, however, so I want to give the public an opportunity to raise their own points of concern or questions. If you are out there watching us or listening to us on your phone, if you raise your hand, either by clicking that raise hand button or by hitting *9, we'll take everybody in the order that they raise their hands. All right, I see we have Ciro Scotti. I want to give the public an opportunity to raise their own point. So you're still muted, Ciro. All right, you should be audible now. And if you want to be seen, you can click on that little video icon in the bottom left-hand corner.
There you are.
And just
actually, it's Chiro.
Chiro.
Thank you for taking my question. So when these, no, I'm not muted.
We can hear you.
Okay, when these, okay, my question is, will the town now take over maintenance of these roads?
I'll let, yes, but John, if you want.
John Schock, Public Service Director. Yes, once the council accepts them, we're responsible for maintenance thereafter.
Chiro, I don't know if it's possible, but if you turn on the audio on your computer, you'll actually hear us speaking to you in real time. But did you have a follow-up question?
Come over here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. All right, is there anybody else who would like to speak? All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Debbie Kelso, motion to close the public hearing.
Joe Veely, second.
Motion by Deb, second by Joe. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. At this point, I'll bring forward item 12A, which would accept, is a resolution accepting for town ownership and maintenance the roads and associated infrastructure associated with the East Matunic Farms subdivision. Do I hear a motion on 12A?
Joe Veely, motion to approve agenda item 12A.
Debbie Kelso, second.
The motion from Joe, second from Deb. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. And now we can move back to 7B. Do I hear a motion on 7B?
Debbie Kelso, motion to approve item 7B.
Brian DeCruz, I'll second that.
All right, motion from Deb, second from Bryant. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? And that motion carries as well and brings us to 7C, which is a public hearing relative to filing the CDBG fiscal year 2019 application for the purposes of reviewing the draft application and obtaining citizen views on the proposed activities. Following activities are being considered for inclusion in that application: South Kingstown Housing Authority laundry facility construction for $360,000 and administration for $54,000 for a total of $414,000. Rob, you are muted still.
Yeah, this is Rob. We're going to need Kayla back in the room for this one, Colleen.
She's coming. I booted her by mistake. Sorry.
That's no problem. I'm back with you real quick. All right. Good evening again. Kayla Gray, Director of Planning. So tonight before you is the CDBG application, which has become a bit of an annual ritual for us. What I wanted to do tonight is I'm going to give you all a little bit of context on the application, on the project that's within the application we're putting forward, because it is not a new project. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of context on that. And then I also want to just quickly introduce Brian Wagner, who is new in our department and who has been working diligently on the CDBG program this spring. So to begin with, I'll say the Housing Authority Laundry Project is something that some council members will be familiar with. In 2018, which was CDBG program year 17, we had applied for this project, but as a standalone new building being proposed at the facility on Champaign Heights facility on Curtis Corner. Since that time, that grant award was actually received by the town. We ran into several issues, let's call them, along the way. I called them a series of unfortunate events that led the project to some delay. They were a variety of natures, starting with the architect who had worked on the project unexpectedly passing away. We had some delays and changes at the leadership of the Housing Authority. We also had some changes in leadership in the planning department. So we had a number of sort of changes going along throughout that time, and the project got a little bit delayed. So with that in mind, this winter, as you all know, we have a new sort of suite of board members at the Housing Authority. And with that, in February and March, the Housing Authority looked at this project and said, you know, we're really interested in seeing this be a slightly different proposal. And so they came forward to us and asked if we could talk with the Office of Housing and Community Development at the state about making some changes to that grant agreement for a standalone building, instead changing it to potentially be something that was going to move the washers and dryers into individual units, and there was a bit of back and forth about how the Housing Authority wanted to proceed. So we set up a meeting with the Office of Housing and Community Development this spring to ask whether or not we could simply amend or extend the contract we had in place, or if we needed to seek new funding for the project, because notably it is certainly pushing the end of the timeline on program year 17 funding. So at that time, that meeting occurred, and we got the distinct understanding that it would be better to proceed as a new application. The Housing Authority was a bit unclear on exactly how they wanted to move forward, whether they wanted centralized laundry facilities or in-unit facilities. And in our discussion, we decided it was really, really best for a new application to be put together. And since then, because the world continues to unfold minute by minute, we have had continued conversations with the Housing Authority and with the state. And so one of those conversations most recently today was about whether or not we did actually need a new application, or if the state would be more inclined to see an extension to that old program year 17 award, now that the Housing Authority over the spring has finalized their vision a bit more and is sort of clear on what exactly they'd like to do. That is creating a centralized facility within the maintenance or administration building that exists on the property today. So with that information, we believe, and it's conversational at this moment with the state, that we can actually receive an extension from the old program year 17 award the Housing Authority received. So all of that is a very long way to explain to you all that before you tonight is an application which we hope to not need to submit. We hope to be able to have this application, have this project move forward with a simple amendment and extension of the program year 17 contract. And off of some verbal conversations today, we think that that will happen. But to keep all options open, because we do not yet have a formed extension agreement in our hands, we want to keep the authority from you all tonight to move forward with that application. If over the next week, before the application is due to the state, we find that there is a reason why that can't occur, we want to leave both avenues open so we can make sure that this important project moves forward. And that is sort of the summary of where we are tonight.
Thanks, Kayla. Any questions for Kayla about this item? So Kayla, does this prevent us from applying for other projects? Were there other projects that are getting squeezed out by this?
You know what, that's an interesting and important question. So thank you, Abel. There were not other applications that came forward in this year's Community Development Block Grant solicitation. So traditionally, the town sees applications for public service applications. So organizations that provide supportive services, and also for public facilities, which is the construction of new facilities or improvements to benefit low and moderate income residents. We, for this funding cycle, have only seen the Housing Authority come forward with an application that met the criteria for funding. There was an interest in doing a little bit of improvements to a town facility, but it wasn't something that we could qualify under CDBG. And we have not had service providers come forward this year for application. So it's no one else is squeezed out because of it. The dollar amount being proposed is not causing anyone else to lose funding that's being put forward. It was simply actually, as things pan out, the only requester received for funding this year that qualified.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll open this up for public comments. So same song and dance, everybody. If you would like to make a comment or have a question about this item, you can raise your hand. If you're on your computer, there's a little raise hand option. If you're on your phone, press *9. All right, I see that we don't have any public comments for this item. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Debbie Kelso, motion to close the public hearing.
Brian DeCruz, second.
Motion from Deb, second by Bryant. Any further discussion? All right, do I see anyone opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed unanimously. Do I hear a motion on 7C?
It's Debbie Kelso, motion to approve item 7C.
Brian DeCruz, second.
Motion by Deb, second by Bryant. Any discussion?
The only discussion I'd like to make, this is Bryant. This is something that's been long in the works, so I'm happy to see that it's hopefully starting to move forward again.
I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Agreed.
All right. Is there anyone opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to item 7D, a public hearing relative to adoption of the FY 2020/2021 position allocation to pay schedule as shown on Exhibit 1 on the agenda. And Rob, you're muted still.
If you can, Susan, if you could bring Amy Reiner in.
You should be coming right in. Yes.
All right, so Amy is the right person to brief the council on this.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, Amy Reiner, Director of Administrative Services. Tonight's public hearing is on the fiscal year 2020-2021 non-organized municipal employee pay plan. Per section 1329 and 1331 of the town code, a pay plan and rules for its administration shall be prepared and submitted to the town council for adoption. This has been historically presented to the council each year in June prior to the next fiscal year beginning. And the pay plan consists of both the position allocation to pay schedule and the grade and step schedule, which are attached to the agenda tonight as Exhibit 1. As there are changes proposed to the 2020-2021 position allocation to pay schedule portion of the pay plan, this is presented to the council this evening for consideration. The organization of both the position allocation to pay schedule and the grade and step schedule remain the same as they have been, with multiple grades, positions assigned to each grade, and multiple steps within each grade. In June of 2019, you may recall that at the town manager's recommendation, the town council approved the creation of a new grade, grade 19, though no positions were assigned to that grade for the 1920 fiscal year. For fiscal year 2020-2021, the town manager has proposed reclassifying 2 existing positions to grade 19, which are currently at a grade 18, the finance director and the director of public services. In addition, there's a few new positions, justification for which was discussed during the budget process, and these have been assigned to existing grades within the pay plan based on similar positions. The council is also presented this evening with the non-union employee benefit summary, which provides detail on additional employee benefits for non-organized personnel such as healthcare, longevity, vacation, and sick leave. If you wanted me to discuss those details and the proposed change to that at this point, I certainly can, or I can wait until the resolution later on the agenda.
Thank you, Amy. Questions for Amy?
Hi, Amy. Rory McEntee. Can you identify those positions that have changed from one grade to another as a result of this?
Sure, there are only 2 positions that are proposed for reclassification. The 2 positions are currently assigned a grade 18. It's the finance director and the director of public services, and they are proposed to move from 18 to 19. That I will note, those expenses related to that reclassification have been adopted as part of the council's fiscal year 2021 budget.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, any other questions for Amy?
I have a question. This is Brian. With everything going on in the world right now, do you think it would be possible to consider, adding maybe some of the positions that we need, potentially like at the dog or animal shelter, but maybe moving the raises out to like 6 months from now.
So the current budget does include funding for all of the positions as described this evening. But again, we know that revenues may, be impacted. We have some projections from the state as far as adjusting when those hires will occur. Rob and I have talked that we are looking to slow hire, whether it's new positions, whether it's existing vacancies when folks retire or when folks leave for another job elsewhere. I'm not sure if Rob wants to speak to his intent on that any further, but we are trying to be very mindful of expenses. Certainly personnel and benefits are the majority of our costs, like many organizations, and we're trying to do our best to keep costs down.
Yeah, so that is in fact the case. 75 to 80% of our total expenditures are personnel expenditures, and to the extent that we can realize savings, and Amy will talk about this when we come to the resolution later on, through adjustments to the benefits packages, that's great. But really, it's salaries that are the big variable for us. So holding off on the filling of positions is a classic strategy. It is what we're going to have to do this year to provide some flexibility. In terms of providing sort of a 6-month hiatus on pay increases, it's obviously doable. It's possible to do that. Whether or not that helps or hinders an organization is really dependent on the circumstances that the organization finds itself in. We're not going to be in a position to hold off on pay raises for union positions. Those are contractual. We're contractually obliged to provide those pay raises at the beginning of the new fiscal year. So not going to be able to do it with regard to union contract covered positions. You can do it with regard to non-union positions, whether that hurts morale, changes the characteristics of the organization, creates a dynamic in the organization that's going to be counterproductive, is really just a question of sort of feeling out where folks are. I do think that it's fair to say that everybody in South Kingstown has been working their tail off since COVID-19 hit. And I'm not in favor of doing anything that doesn't recognize the extraordinary efforts that have been made by the folks who are working for the town at this point. I would not recommend it because I don't think that it's beneficial to morale. I don't think it's beneficial to the organization. Further, I will suggest to you that even where we sort of had some contingencies, and I'm going to foreshadow a little bit here, Representative Carol McEntee has been successful in getting our municipal court legislation through the state legislature. That bill is now before the governor, and we had anticipated that with the need for ramping up and changing the scope of work for folks in the clerk's office, we'd have to upgrade those positions. We're going to begin those discussions because I think we're going to be preparing for implementation of a municipal court program. If not this fiscal year, we want to have everything ready and on the ground for next fiscal year. So I'm anticipating an increase in wage expenses associated with the clerk's office simply because we're changing the nature of the work. So yes, it's possible to do it. Whether I think it's a wise thing for us to postpone pay raises for the folks who have been working hard to keep us going during COVID-19, I do not.
So Rob, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Why is it that you have created a new grade and included these two positions in this grade? We know them, we work with them regularly. They do a great job, obviously, but
Sure.
we work with a lot of people on this list who do a great job. And those
Sure.
are the only people who have moved up a grade, I guess.
Sure. So this is actually a grade that has previously existed in town government. There was a grade 19 prior to my arrival. It was taken away. It was the pay grade system was changed before I got here. The 19 was reduced to an 18. When I got here, there was a lot of concern that the pay grade system had gotten out of whack. And I can't say that we've completely resolved that either. I mean, I think that the pay grade system that we have in South Kingstown, other members of the council will have heard me say this before, is in my view too heavy on grades and too short, too light on steps. I'd rather have a system that has fewer grades and more sort of incremental growth in each grade than our system has. I don't like this system, but I inherited it. When we were dealing with these two positions, and it's important to note, these two positions are allocated positions. These are positions where in the Director of Public Services case, we actually are getting 3 for the price of 1. We have a wastewater manager, we have a water company water service manager, and we have a Director of Public Works. And in the case of the finance director, we have a director who handles not only the town operations, but the enterprise operations for wastewater, the water system, and manages significant chunks of the work for the school department as well. So these are positions that are very broad, very complex, with the possible exception of the police department, probably the most complex possible exception of the school department's leadership team. These positions are really the most complex we've got in town government. All directors do a very important work. The scope of dollars involved in the management of DPS, the scope of dollars involved obviously in the management of the finance department, the number of personnel in the case of the DPS, and the scope of the work are distinguishing factors. They are very different. So one of the things that Amy Reiner and I tried to do a couple of years ago when we had concerns expressed about other directors' positions being misgraded, was we wanted to sit down and look at the complexity of the work for all of the positions. When I recommended that we create a grade 19, it was in part because we knew that these positions, these two positions, were just very different than the others. And to be honest with you, while I don't love the system, we're growing some headroom for all other positions in the out years. Municipal government's a little bit of an odd duck when it comes to grades and steps and position allocation and the fee that you're paying for municipal work. It'd be nice if it were more like a state government. It would be nice if it was more like the federal government in that you could simply say, this is the chunk of work and this work is what this is the price we pay for this work, and anybody who's coming in to do this work for us gets paid this much and only this much. We're in a competitive environment, and we have to take into account the fact that the market, if you will, is relatively small. And when we went out and looked for a finance director a year and a half, 2 years ago, what we found was we couldn't get anybody. We weren't paying we weren't offering a competitive price. There was a shortage of qualified directors of finance, and we had to figure out how to compensate our director better. And again, it's in part because of the complexity of that position. You know, I'm very sensitive to the fact that there are always concerns about, you know, are we doing this because he likes these guys? Are we doing this because they're guys and not women? I'm always very concerned about whether or not we've got some sort of bias working its way into the personnel system. The only thing I can tell the council with regard to that is we take into account the complexity, the market conditions, whether or not we're paying a fair wage to all of our positions as compared to other municipalities, and whether I've checked my implicit biases. We all have biases, and I never make a decision without asking the question, have I done this because of something I'm not thinking about? Is there some unconscious factor? And in these two cases, there isn't. There simply is no unconscious factor that has played its way or played into this decision. We had a need for recruitment in one case and retention in the other. We really were faced with trying to replace people who were dealing with complex work sets, and we needed to make sure we had the best qualified people. I hope that is helpful.
Rob.
Well, Rob, this is Bryant. Your explanation was very helpful. The only thing I think that some in the community might be concerned about is, we cut adult daycare services, laid people off, but now next week we're increasing wages.
Yeah, timing is always a challenge. I mean, there's never a good time for laying people off, and there's never a good time in the public sector for saying we have to increase wages. And in fact, if you're in business, there's never really a good time to increase wages on that side either. I mean, you may be having a great year, but you still have to watch out for what's coming down the road next year. So yes, I'm aware of the fact that the timing is not great. However, this is our schedule, and we're where we are every year with the same request for codifying the pay grade system. And one of the things that we had talked about at the budget hearings was the need to get an HR person, part-time HR person in our shop. This is there are two things that I want a new HR focus on going forward. One is training, and the other is figuring out some better way to deal with our pay grade system. I am not a fan of it. I'm not comfortable with where we are. I will acknowledge that there's some rationality to it. I just don't love all of the consequences of this system.
Rob Giovilli. So I have, I have a question. I just want to make a comment first. I know that the information from the next quarter will be much more helpful.
Did we?
Am I having a problem being heard? No. So the information from the next quarter of tax payments will be more helpful, but we had a May and I guess an extension to June 1st. Do we have an idea of how those collections are going? And again, I know it's so close to the COVID event.
So yes, you're right on both counts. Next quarter will be sort of a better indicator. But our experience in May and June was that there was a minor noticeable impact, but statistically speaking, we are not off our collection rates. We're doing fine.
Okay, that's helpful. And again, the September or August number will be much more accurate. The problem is we don't have the luxury of seeing those before we need to make this decision. The other observation I'll make, and this has come up a few times over the last few budget years, is that while every dollar is important, and I get that how you manage a budget is by the dollars, not just the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, but the total impact to the budget with this change in the allocation grades is, I hate to use the word minor because again, tens of thousands of dollars do matter, but in a $94 or $96 million budget, I say this when we're dealing with some other sections of the budget that we'll spend an awful lot of time on $150,000 or $200,000 and then, approve a property tax transfer that's in the tens of millions. So that's just an observation. And I know that adult daycare has nothing to do with tonight's, but Bryant brought it up. So I just want to make a comment about that. And I can save it, Abel, if you want to the comment section, but and maybe you have, so I won't prejudge this, but we do have sectors of government that are not profitable. A lot of what we do is not profitable. And the adult daycare system is an important component to, a number of our residents. So I'm just asking that we give that another look that is harder and says, here's the cost. Let's do the analysis and say, what used to be nearly a break even, or maybe cost the taxpayers a little bit of money, is now going to cost us, $150,000 if we continue to the end of the year. I just picked a number. But I think that sort of deeper dive analysis needs to be done before it's absolutely shut down, because it is important. And again, I mean, we know we don't make money on a lot of what we do. We provide a service that may come close to break even and may not. So anyway, those are my comments as it relates to this allocation system and the steps. Yeah, all the dollars are important, but in the big picture, it's not a big percentage of the budget. I mean, it wouldn't be out of the question if things got awful that we asked the union to open up the contract, because our collection rates are so low. As I don't think it would be unusual to go to these non-union administrators and say, to save these positions, we have to make some financial adjustments. So I mean, that's something we have to keep our eye on after we have the luxury of that collection rate in the next quarter. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Bob Zarnetsky. Mr. President, if I may, I'd like to just comment. They are positions on the table, so it's relevant here. Councilman Veely, you're exactly right. I mean, the decision with regard to adult daycare was not an easy one. It's actually not a decision that was made data free. We did a very detailed analysis. Terry Murphy and Sue DeMasi did a very detailed analysis of the consequences of the program. And to be honest with you, it's not just a numbers thing. In fact, Terry and I had this conversation again today saying, geez, it's not that big a number. We spend the same amount of general fund money on other programs. The issue on some level is that the numbers of people that we are able to have in the program just aren't where they need to be. The state regulation and state guideline at this point is 10. If you're planning for 10, then you're looking at daily attendance quite often in the single digits. So operating a facility for 6, 7 people becomes problematic. It does have a negative impact. It is not inconsequential, but it's not just that we're not breaking even on the program. We're not breaking even, and the program is of diminishing return in the COVID era.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Rob, I'm sure that you and your administration did the deep dive and it was data driven. And I certainly have nothing but respect for your administrators. And I didn't mean to imply that wasn't.
No.
Thank you.
So maybe Terry or Rob can answer this. What is the normal capacity of the adult daycare?
Hi, Terry Murphy, Director of Leisure Services. So what I would say is if the council recalls, every year when we present our budget, our operating budget for the adult day services program, it's based on actual numbers in terms of the daily census for adult day. The capacity of the building and our staff is a maximum of 20 clients a day. In the past 3 or 4 years, we've been running between a dozen to maybe 15 clients a day, where we really feel the ideal capacity is, in order to operate a program that is sustainable, is between 14 and 16 clients a day. We've seen that decline, and it's something historically that has ebbed and flowed. But in the past 3 years, we've seen somewhat of a consistent decline. We'll head up a little bit, and what we see is that our population, the average age is much older than it was even 7, 8, 9 years ago. We have, I think the average age is about 86 years old of our clientele. And what that causes also is the need to constantly reach out to the community, draw in more clients so that we have a consistent census on a daily basis. So this year in particular, we've been running since the fall on the 10 or 11, 12 maybe clients a day, and going into this time where adult days are able to reopen under DOH guidelines, which have the restrictions related to COVID. It's that much more challenging because we would only have the capacity for 10 clients. And that being said, we would likely not have 10 clients a day just by virtue of this being the most vulnerable population. Some folks needing to stay home or choosing to stay home, while others honestly need it for not only the elder, but also the parents or the caregivers. So we're in this very challenging time and have been for a few years to try to really get that census number up. We've eliminated some positions, part-time positions, in order to hold the line on the budget. We've used some of the resources from the senior center to offset those, custodial, kitchen staff. So those all have come into play, and it's been a tighter and tighter line that we're walking in terms of trying to keep this a sustainable program. I would say we would need somebody to be on the marketing side of this to really do a whole outreach piece in order to get that program up and running again into the community. We have a part-time caseworker. A lot of this has lent itself to becoming a smaller program and trying to really sustain it, even with the offset from the contributing communities of South Kingstown, Narragansett, and North Kingstown, who all contribute to try to keep the program operational.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
And I need to apologize. My computer dropped for a few minutes there, maybe a minute. So I think I missed some comments. It seems like the conversation has focused on the adult day program. Is that something that is part of this public hearing, and how was that?
Mr. President, only tangentially in that it is part of the allocation of positions. It's not a major factor. It was just a tangent that was still germane.
So any further questions on this position allocation to pay schedule? All right. Well, this is a public hearing, so if there are folks in the audience who would like to make a comment on this item, please raise your hand now. We'll call on you in the order that your hand is raised. And if you are on your phone, press *9. I see Greg Sweet has his hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. I own a small business, so I get an opportunity to go out and talk to a lot of the residents and also a number of the local businesses. Everybody is still on edge on what the future is going to bring. They're making cuts, and they're not going overboard on what they are spending money on. You guys talk about having a pretty good tax payment rate, and I think it was 98%. It was said a month or so ago, and that's probably true. But people are faced with, do I pay my taxes or do I not and lose my home? I think what people are doing, because they've told me, they've had to cut back on things to make their tax payments. So to say that the taxes are being paid kind of makes it sound like it's not a big deal. People can just pay them. They just write the check, no problem. But they are making sacrifices to their normal lives. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration when you're going to vote on the increases that you're going to vote on. One of the things you talked about, Rob, was the morale could be low if raises are not giving and things of that nature. Well, I'm not giving anybody a raise. And I didn't just say you're not getting a raise. I sat everybody down and talked to them. Obviously, they don't like not getting a raise, but they totally understand what's going on. We're no different than any other business. And I think to a certain degree, this part of the town is the same way. It's a business there. I know many of the people that work at the town, and they may not like it that they don't get a raise, but I think they understand what's going on locally. There are many people that don't even have jobs now, let alone getting a raise. So I think if it's explained to everybody that is eligible or that is up for a raise, why they couldn't get one, again, they may not like it, but I think they would accept it, especially knowing, other people are being hurt by this. So that's kind of it for my comments. I really think you need to give that a lot of consideration, though. People are still suffering.
That's great.
Mr. President, if it's appropriate, I wouldn't mind responding to that.
Sure.
Greg, your point is very well taken. I mean, look, we recognize we're still out and about. We still are working with people in the community. We recognize that there's pain out there. There's pain in town hall, though, too. I mean, we've had women in the clerk's office who've been working weekends to deal with extraordinary mail-in ballots associated with the presidential preference primary, and working weekends and dealing with an extraordinary volume of emergency ballots associated with the referendum. They've never had to encounter they've never encountered anything like this. They've never had to put in the hours. They've never had to put in the effort that they're putting in right now. It's true that there's a lot of pain out there, but the town government is still working. And for some of our folks, the fact that it's still working under these adverse conditions is the pain. My concern isn't so much that we're going to have bad or poor morale because people aren't going to get additional money. My concern is that we're going to have poor morale because people don't recognize that our folks are hurting too. Our folks are actually working their tails off, trying to keep things going under very difficult circumstances. And that's true for pretty much everybody in town government. Everybody has had to change the way they do business. Everybody has had to change the way they're going about doing what they do on a daily basis. In some cases, like the clerk's office, the workload has just exploded. And in some cases, it's just trying to figure out how to get the work done when you don't have the resources, you don't have the people, you don't have the vehicles you need to get the job done. When you're doing social distancing and you can't put 2 men in a truck, that sounds like a minor problem. But for the guy who's trying to make sure all the potholes get filled, it's a significant problem. It's a problem on a daily basis, and they're tackling those problems. They're solving the problems that the community has under these conditions. I'm just concerned that we don't acknowledge and we don't honor the work that is being done. It's not that we're sitting back, eating bonbons and watching TV during COVID. Our folks are working their tails off.
Please don't think that I don't think they are working their butts off, because I do. I can't imagine Sue in the position that she has right now. I'm surprised she still has hair. I would have thought she would have pulled it out by now. Keep in mind, though, the people that work for me, I can't hire an extra person. So they are working their tails off also. And not only are they working their tails off, they're going into people's homes. And a lot of them are out of towners, people that own property here that come just for the summer. So they're going to homes with a mask, and a cloth mask that was made, not, you know, the high-tech masks, because I wasn't able to get them. So my guys also are working their tails off too. I do think that they deserve a raise. Sadly, I can't give it to them. I can't afford it. The people at South County Hospital are certainly working their tails off. I appreciate that. A number of them have been laid off. I don't know whether they've been hired back, but a lot of them have not been. That I do, and I don't know what a lot is. I'm only going by what's told to me. So I'm not saying that anybody at the town hall does not deserve a raise. I'm not saying that at all. There's a lot of people though within the town hall and within the public service that deserve raises. But this is just such horrific times. Most people are not getting raises. That's all. But please don't think that I'm saying the town employees don't deserve them, because they do. I know they're working their butts off.
Mr. President, this is Rob Zernetsky again. Greg, thank you for that. We do appreciate at least the acknowledgement. It's an important thing for folks to know, and I didn't mean to suggest that you were saying otherwise. So I appreciate your letting our folks know that you know it.
Yeah, they do a hell of a job. They really do. You got a good group there.
No, we got an amazing group, and I'll tell you, I've been impressed every single day since we hit April or March 15th. You know, even these meetings, Greg, we've had staff on these meetings until midnight. I don't know how many times. Our folks are working hard to make sure that the government keeps going.
Yep. So, all right.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments from the public at this time? Seeing none. Any comments from council members? Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Debbie Kelso, motion to close the public hearing.
Brian DeCruz, second.
Motion by Deb, second by Bryant. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that public hearing is closed. Do I hear a motion on 7D?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 7D.
Motion by Rory.
Debbie Kelso, I'll second that.
Second by Deb. Discussion.
You know, I agree with all of what's been said tonight. Our employees work their tails off. They do a great job. They put in extra time all the time. And we're in kind of still a little bit of uncharted territory. Personally, I would feel more comfortable if we had numbers from September. I understand it's only a small part of our budget, but I don't know what our future budget's going to look like. And perception sometimes is a reality for people. So for me, if we're going to vote on this, I probably will vote no at the present time.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Can I just add, what happens if we do vote no on this? I mean, the budget is already passed with these positions planned as they are.
Right. So I think that the effect of a no vote here is that we continue with the position allocation that we had last year. And we would be really, I mean, Amy, the only thing that's changed is the allocation across the grades, and the pay scale goes up per the routine regular increase. So we would be denying to our non-union employees the pay grade or the pay increase that would be going to our union employees. That would be the effect. Although the money for these increases would be available and that money would go unexpended. So it, if in effect, would end up being surplus at the end of the year if that condition were to continue for the entire year. So the money for these positions, the money for the assignment of these positions as outlined on the table is already budgeted for. Those monies would be unexpended until the adjustment is made. And we would continue to see the pay raises for all union employees. So as I've expressed in the past, I think this is not necessarily wise labor management relations either, because if we are contractually obliged to give raises to one group of people because of their status and not willing to provide the same benefit to those of a different status, then the one status becomes preferable to the other. And I think we tend to see an increase in the call for union participation in positions that otherwise are non-union. I think we mess with morale. I mean, I think we mess with labor relations.
Thanks, Rob. Any other comments? Questions? All right, will the clerk take the roll?
Council President Collins.
Aye.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
No.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Aye.
Councilman McEntee.
Aye.
Councilman Veely.
Aye.
The vote is 4-1 in favor.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 8, communications. 8A are emails from Matt McHugh, member of the board of directors for the Matunic Point Beach Club, Catherine Connery and Deborah Garneau, members of the Matunic Point Beach Club, Stephen Hitchery, concerning access to Potter's Pond and requesting that application be made to the Coastal Resources Management Council to designate Water Street as a state right-of-way, or at least a town right-of-way, received, placed on file. And I'm sure there's folks who want to speak to this item. Before I open it up to those people, Rob, can you just go over sort of the steps you've taken in communicating with CRMC and what their response has been?
Yes, back in October, we were requested by a resident down in the Matunic area to put a request into CRMC to begin the investigation process to determine whether or not a public right-of-way has been established. Now, under state law in Rhode Island, since the 1980s, CRMC is the state agency designated with the authority to determine whether or not a public right-of-way has been established by prescriptive easement or by deed or by any other means. CRMC does not create public access to waterways, but it does determine the facts to find out whether or not a public right-of-way does exist, whether a public access point has been created by any operation of the law. I followed up with CRMC. In fact, I spoke to CRMC's interim executive director today, and they are going to begin their investigative process. And that will involve a public hearing or several public hearings. They will look at the land records here in South Kingstown. We will share with them whatever information we've got related to the use of Water Street in our records. But it is CRMC that has the legal authority to determine who has the right to use Water Street. We do not. I will say this. I had a good question from Councilman DeCruz. He asked at one point a couple of weeks ago, are our hands tied on Water Street? And what I told him, and I think is exactly the right characterization of our status, is this. We don't own Water Street, so our hands are tied. We cannot give permission to use Water Street because we don't own it. We don't have the right to give permission to use it. With regard to who does own it, we're not the court of competent jurisdiction. We can't decide who has that right. CRMC has to decide who has that right. And with regard to signage, we do have the authority to either put signs up or not. And we've tried both now. We put a sign up on the theory that we've always put signs up, that it would help people find their way in the neighborhood. And it became very clear once we put up the no access signs that these signs were being seen as much more than just wayfinding signs. They were being seen as the town taking sides in a private property dispute and deciding, whether people had access rights or not. So when we realized that folks were reading our signs more broadly than as simple road signs, we took them down because we don't have the authority to decide who has the property rights associated with Water Street. So our hands are tied, we don't own it. Our hands are tied, we can't tell you and cannot find the facts to determine who does. And our hands are not tied with regard to signs, but having waded into those waters, we realize we don't make things better by putting up signs.
Thanks, Rob. And just, speaking on behalf of the council, I know we've all been receiving emails from, very concerned residents who live down in Matunic or people who have kept their boats moored and have accessed them through Water Street over the years, decades even. We definitely appreciate all those emails. And I do note that most of them are also going to CRMC, which is great. Keep those emails, letters going to CRMC. I think the more evidence that, we can build up there, the stronger the case is that it is a public right-of-way as it's been used over the years. And I think, you have sympathetic ears here on the council. It's unfortunate that we have little power to help at this moment. But I do want to, of course, let people speak to the issue as well. So I see that Deb Garneau has her hand raised. If we could bring her in.
Abel, this is Brian. Before we go to Deb, just a quick comment or question for Rob. Rob, that conversation that we had, we also talked about the difference between a public right-of-way and I believe a different way. I think was it public right-of-way? You remind me on that?
Yeah, so I think that the distinction I was making was a municipal right-of-way, one owned by the municipality, and a public right-of-way. A public right-of-way can exist without the town owning it. And that's what CRMC has to determine.
Abel, if I could, it's Debbie Kelso. If I could just ask one question too before we go to the public. In CRMC's process, do they hold public hearings or would they hold a public hearing to try to resolve this matter?
Yes, understanding based on my conversation with the interim director this afternoon. They will have a public hearing. There will be a whole investigation. They're going to look at testimony from folks who've been using it for a long period of time. They're going to look for licenses and permissions. They're going to look at the whole bundle of things to determine whether or not it's been used long enough to comport with the state law.
Thank you.
Long enough and under the right conditions. There's also that. It's not just a matter of timing. It's a matter of timing plus everything else that they have to determine. So for example, I don't want to get too deep into this because this is not our bailiwick. This is not what we determine, but one can imagine a license having been granted so that, a prescriptive easement doesn't arise because people are doing it under a license, under permission. So CRMC is going to have to figure out what the whole set of circumstances is.
Thanks, Rob. All right, Deb Garneau, you are muted at the moment, but if you unmute yourself and if you want to be seen, you can click on that little video icon down in
Yeah,
the
we
corner.
Yeah, I'm Deb Garno. I live at 30 Ninigret Road in Matunic. I'm a year-round resident, and I do have a boat that I access that pond with. I did listen to your executive session, and I heard all this from the town manager before. So I'm not going to comment on the sign being put up, sign being taken down. It is taken down, and I understand CRMC is involved. One of my questions is that sign on Water Street was always, quote, blue, meaning it was a public road. It wasn't until like 2 years ago, it mysteriously turned to white. Nobody really paid much attention to it until now, because it wasn't an issue. So why did that happen is one of my first questions. Why did it go from a blue road, a blue sign, to a white sign after years and years and years of it being one color? My second thing is you have moorings. You charge all these people for town moorings. The town mooring inspector uses Water Street to access those, to inspect those moorings. How is that not part of the town road then? Why is that not part of the town's authority to deem that a right of way to that water? Are you going to refund all these people's mooring fees because they can't access their moorings now? So those are some of my points that we like answered.
So, Mr. President, this is Rob Zarnetsky. So we have, by tradition, we do a number of things on private roads. We sometimes do signage. We sometimes roads. We sometimes plow the roads. We sometimes grade the roads a couple of times a year. It really is by tradition. And Water Street has traditionally been signed by the town. That's sort of been the extent of our activity on that road. John Schock might be able to provide us information on the color of the sign. I don't know off the top of my head why we had a blue sign and then switched to a white sign. It may be that, you know, the folks doing the sign finally realized it's not a blue sign, which typically indicates it's a town road. The other question with regard to our mooring field is, yes, we've had a mooring field for a number of years. I'm told it's more than a decade off of Water Street. And that is part of the evidence that CRMC will look at, I'm sure, to determine whether or not a public right-of-way has been established. To the best of my knowledge, we were never given permission for town mooring people to use use Water Street as access to that mooring field. So there is a question about how it is that we were doing that for, again, I've been told more than a decade. But again, this is CRMC. We've had somebody bring the ownership and the right to use into a contest, and the only one who can referee that fight is CRMC. You're right, we've got a mooring field there, and it is going to be a major inconvenience for anyone who wants to actually continue to use that mooring field. If people want reimbursement or want to be refunded for the mooring field, we will do that. We'll take back those moorings from folks who do not want to use them because of the questions surrounding the use of Water Street. But if folks still want to maintain their mooring there and want to continue to use Water Street, they're going to have to deal with the fact that there's ambiguity about whether they can.
Thank you, Rob. John, did you have any? Hold on.
Can we respond?
Hold on one second. John Schock, if you wouldn't mind discussing the color of the signs, I don't know. You got an answer?
Sure. John Schock, Public Services Director. So in the town, the nomenclature for signs is for state roads, green background with white letters, town roads are blue background with white letters, and private roads have a white background with black letters. That being said, we have historically signed Water Street by tradition. And I'm not aware that the color changed. The only thing I could surmise is we did have a change in the individual that does the traffic signage in town. And if the sign that was there prior was in need of replacement, obviously we're going to put the correct color nomenclature, the white background with the black letters, which is the private road. That's how it's currently signed.
All All right, thanks, Jim. Deb, you.
Yeah,
had-
can I ask how you determined it was a private road? Because I am an assessor. I have been a realtor for over 25 years, and I have literally researched every deed on Water Street. And in no person's deed does it say they own Water Street. It all says bounded by on the westerly side by Water Street, bounded on the easterly side by Water Street. Water Street is not owned by them. I also have maps from 1923 recorded by Samuel H. Davis, who owned this whole area. And Water Street is clearly labeled, so is Nitigrit, Peninsula, Ocean, and parts of Matunic Beach Road. This was all his land. He labeled it Water Street. Access, so 1923, it was there. I mean, that's our big question. If it's deemed a private road, then Matunic Point Beach Club owns it, I guess. So going back from 1923, but clearly states, and I know there was a couple of attorneys who sent something into you, I think as early as this morning, so I'm not sure if it was on the agenda tonight. And just by the fact that it's been used for more than a decade as a public access into that pond, it's not only the boat people, it's people from Mary Carpenter's who have kayaks walking down the road. There's no other place for them to get into the pond. In a state of emergency, if there's a hurricane, any boat that is in that pond, they cannot get out. There is under the bridge, but the water rises so quickly, you cannot get a boat under that bridge if it's in a state of emergency to get anything out. That's a major concern from everybody down here. And I'm hoping that some other members will talk about that. That's what they're all telling me this. We can't get our boats out. A hurricane comes, there's no way to get our boats under that bridge. Half of them won't even fit. We have a sailboat. I can't get under that bridge. You know what I mean? That's the only way I can get my boat out of that pond is that access, and it's been used. Now, another concern is the driveway from the C&J Properties, who owns the corner house and the house right on the pond. They have a 990 Matunic Beach Road access. They've always had one long driveway that accessed both properties. A couple of years ago, coincidentally, I think it was when the sign turned to white, they put their driveway, a gravel driveway, on Water Street. It changed the whole direction of Water. It put a big jog in the street. Everybody kind of dealt with it. Nobody said anything. And then I researched stuff. They have a CRMC assent that they're in violation of for a dock. They can't disturb within 200 feet of the shoreline. That driveway is 50 feet. They've taken out all the foliage, the natural beach vegetation. I know that's not your issue, that's CRMC issue, but they've made it difficult, but nobody would have said anything. They're just dealing with it until that red no access sign went up. That's what our issue is. You know, it's like, well, who gave them permission? Did they get a permit to put their driveway on Water Street? I don't think so. If they did, you know, how did they get that permit when they had a CRMC thing that said they can't disturb anything within 200 yards or 200 feet, and they got clearly in violation of that. Those are just some of my comments. So. And our issue is that the town put up the sign on their meeting that they had a meeting in May, and I understand that nobody was around. They said it was on behalf, Christine Chase, on behalf of the community of Matunic. Matunic wasn't even here yet. Most of the residents did not come down until like June, July. You know, we did not even know about it. And I understand that you just went based on what was given to you at that time, but you could, if I can research deeds, anybody can research deeds. And clearly they do not own Water Street. Every deed on that street says bounded by. So that's our big issue. So thank you for hearing me.
So, Mr. President, if I may, just very quickly, again, you know we don't own it, and we don't know who does own it, and we know that we don't have the right to determine who owns it.
Can I ask a quick? Who put the street light at the bottom of the? There's a street light so you can get your boats in and out. Who pays for the street light at the end of the street? Wait, where you at the pond?
I don't know.
You don't know. So, but nobody, but they don't pay taxes on that street either. Nobody's land includes on those. Nobody's land is included in the description of the deeds on Water Street. Like I said, the only reference I could find was these maps from 1923, 1925, 1930 something, 3 different maps describing Matunic Point Beach Club, Matunic Point, just Matunic Point. And they were all originally owned by this Samuel Davis, and they all have Water Street listed as the street right there. So
you may ultimately be exactly right. We're just not, the town just isn't in a position to say so.
Okay.
It's going to be CRMC that decides.
All right, so as far as I'm concerned, right now the sign is down, so everybody can, you know, put their boats in.
We
Put it that
can't
way,
give
you know.
anyone permission. We know we don't own it.
Okay.
That's the only thing I will say.
You also can't stop us.
Okay, I get that, but like I said, one of my main questions is when it was blue, that sign was blue, being in a town road forever, and then it wasn't. So, but anyway, I've said my case. I know other people around here, I guess I'm the spokesperson, have all these issues. So thank you for listening.
We hear your frustration, Deb. Totally understandable. One thing I would say, you know, when Christine first came to us, and, you know, she has her own complaints for, you know, her own reasons. She also expressed the idea that everybody down there needs access to that pond. So she didn't seem entirely unreasonable to me. So I'm hopeful as we wait for this to get sorted out by CRMC that Matunic residents, being the open-minded people that they are, and can work with one another to find ways to grant each other access to that mooring field at the very least. I mean, it's been this way for decades. We should be able to find a way to agree peacefully and get people access to that water. And I know that I have no authority to make that happen, but if I can be helpful in some way, please call on me. I do want to let some other folks speak to this. I see David Latham.
One more point.
No. Other people talk.
Speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm David Latham. Our family has a house at the end of Prospect Road, and like others, we've been putting boats in the water there for 25 years, sailboats, etc. And I appreciate the fact that this is not within your authority to decide. My question then is, will the town be taking an official position on this, on whether or not that should remain a public access point, and forward that guidance for the CRMC to either pay attention to or ignore, or will they leave this matter in the CRMC's hands?
So, Mr. President, this is Rob Zernetsky. I will say that CRMC is going to be looking for opinions from the municipality. Whether those are from the Waterfront Advisory Committee, whether those are from the Town Council, whether they're from the Department of Public Works, we will need to provide some information, which I think is going to amount to a position. I don't know that we're at the administrative level prepared at this point to come to any conclusion. We are learning as we go, but yes, I do think that the town is going to have to provide something of a position on this. Our mooring field is there. We've placed a mooring field at the end of the road, and it's been there for a decade. It's going to be difficult for us to describe that as anything other than an intent to provide access via Water Street. I think that is going to be part of what CRMC considers.
Thank you.
Hey, David. John, do you know where the power to that streetlight comes from? We aren't powering that by any chance, are we?
Yeah, I don't. I can research that tomorrow, but I'm not. I can't tell you if we're paying that utility bill or not.
It'd be interesting to find that out. I see that we have somebody is Hackney F. If you could just state your name for the record when we bring you into the meeting, that would be great. It looks like you are unmuted and you can speak now. You are very soft. I'm afraid we can't hear you yet. So see if you can get closer to your microphone. I think that there is a way for you to test your audio on Zoom. I'm not exactly sure if somebody could provide this gentleman with directions on how to access that. So we do want to hear from you. Hopefully we can get your audio issues worked out. In the meantime, let's bring in John C. Lee. And John, you are muted at the moment. Okay.
Thank you for your time. I just wanted to mention I'm at 218 Peninsula Road, and the family household has been using that as an access point for 35 years. We do value it as a very important asset. And my question was going to be if you were going to be taking a position on it, which I understand that will probably come in the future. But I still did want to weigh in that, you know, we're one of many voices over there that would like to see this continued.
Thank you, John. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Carol Roble?
Hello, this is Ed Roble. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yep, thanks for taking my question and comment. I guess, first of all, I'm at 100 Peninsula Road, been there for about 15 years. And I think, you know, the comments by Deb Garneau, I mean, well represent the concerns of all of us. But just to be clear, I mean, I know there were been many comments about the mooring area, but there are, of course, just stating the obvious, many of us that have registered docks that are there and, you know, which add a great deal of value to the property. We pay a lot of taxes on that property, and, you know, there's potential impact there as well if suddenly we lost access to using the boats we have. And so, I mean, again, just perhaps stating the obvious, it goes well beyond the mooring field, but all of those that use it and owners of docks as well. And I certainly would hope and encourage you folks to, I mean, where you can take a position to support public access. Thank you for taking the time.
Go ahead. All right, let's give Gene Hackney another chance. All right, Gene, you are still muted. If you unmute yourself, hopefully we can hear you.
All right, I should be good now, right?
You are good.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. I changed over to my Kindle. Hey, so a quick question. So yeah, I appreciate the fact that CMRC has, you know, obviously governance over the access to the pond, but the road itself is part of your town. And the fact that we can't understand who owns the town, regardless of the pond access, is sort of like troubling. I mean, who really owns that road? I mean, it's a piece of land in your town, and it seems like there's a debate. It's obviously not owned by any of the property owners that own the public land on both sides. So who actually owns that land?
It's a great question. I think we are trying to determine that. I think we have seen some evidence in the land records about an organization that owned it at some point, and that organization no longer exists. So I don't know if, Mike, have you looked into this any further, or Rob, you may.
No, so that's exactly the point. The road was never officially accepted by a town council going back all those years, and it was owned by a private organization. I really think that this is what is going to have to be determined regardless of who owns the road, whether or not over time it has become a public access. That's why we're in front of CRMC. All of your roads in town were either part of a subdivision or a plat that was accepted. This one, for whatever reasons, was never part of that record, the council records going back into history. And you're right, the gentleman is right that the private organization that did own it has gone out of existence. And so, well, what does that mean? Does it mean that it has become a public road by fiat? No, it can't, because under the law, there are only certain ways a town can legally own a road. And right now, the town does not own that road. Having said that, as Rob mentioned earlier, that doesn't mean that there still might not be a public access over the piece of land, regardless of who owns it. And I'm sure that's what we're going to be coming to a conclusion on. I also agree that the Waterfront Advisory Commission will certainly be heard on this matter. And I also know that because South Kingstown is a water-oriented community, that access to the water and rights of way to the water are sacred to the residents of this town. So all of that will be taken into consideration, and we will get this worked out one way or another. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I very much appreciate your comments and your support for this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Nate.
Hey, good evening, Town Council. I spoke to you guys last month about this Water Street issue, and I agree with Deborah and everybody else before, so I won't repeat what they had to say. I just want to ask a few questions and suggest that as these come up in the future, that the default position is not restricting access, but ask for proof as opposed to take someone's word and put up a sign. And I wasn't so much concerned with the private road sign as much as the no pond access. Who dreamed that one up? And can we, in the future, I think that's what set people off more than the private road thing. So that's all I have tonight. I agree with everybody else, and I hope CRMC can help us.
Nate, can I, even though you did speak to us before, can I just ask you to state your name for the record, full name?
Oh yeah, Nate Merrill, 186 South Whedon Road in Matunic.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody wanted to, was the known pond access a town sign?
It was, and it was a sign that John Schock had indicated would be a potential resolution of the asserted right by a private property owner that we were causing her harm during a public meeting a couple of months ago. It is the case that by tradition, we have posted signs on Water Street. We've done that as far back as our memories go and as far back as our records go. It seemed an appropriate response to a citizen who was saying, this is my land and you're allowing people to travel on my land without my permission. So the sign went up by the town. And it really wasn't until we heard from others that we began to think about what we were doing there. And it wasn't just wayfinding. We were, the way that we do signs when we do them by tradition on private roads is designed to provide travelers with useful information. And what we were trying to do by putting a sign up was to provide travelers with information that they didn't have access to the pond because someone who asserted that they have the right to cut it off was saying they didn't have that right. We realized quickly after the sign went up that we were actually doing more than simply providing useful information to travelers. We were also providing a statement or making a statement about the relative merits of multiple claims. And once we realized that we were had waded into a private dispute, it became clear that the sign was no longer useful as a way sign, and that it was injurious to people as a sign asserting rights. So we took it down.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think we acted hastily in the attempt, of course, to be responsive to, residents, but clearly we could have done a better job, looking into the details greater. Deb, I do see your hand raised, but since you've already spoken, I'm going to let Christine speak first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I wanted to certainly be able to hear from the town regarding this very, as one of the residents said, sacred concern in the Mattoonic community. I wanted to be able to hear from the residents that are part of the community that I belong to and I hold very dear. So I want to start by saying that. Some of you I know, some of you I know by face, some of you I know have known for years in this community. I think things have reeled themselves way out of hand here. As you folks from the town council know, in the course of us doing other legal proceedings on our property, we discussed with our attorney how to address some of the safety and welfare concerns that we had with the, quite frankly, quote unquote, illegal boat ramping on Water Street. The fact that this property's been in my family since the inception, and over 80 years, over 90 years actually. And historically, absolutely, I'll go on record as saying that this road has been used by locals and folks that butt the pond and that have ownership on the pond for canoes, kayaks, and trailing small boats. What's happened with the explosion of the community itself in terms of the residents, the wealth of the residents, and the numbers of residents that are here, not just in the summer, but year round, is that it has now become an extraordinary safety, health, and welfare issues for those of us that are on Water Street. I made it very clear when I spoke, we were advised by our attorney to go to the Waterfront Advisory Committee and consult with them about how we could resolve it. I made it very clear to them, and I made it very clear to you folks that I am a staunch supporter of public access to the shore. In no way, shape, or form have I proposed to disrupt public access to the shoreline, to Potter Pond via Water Street. I made that clear to the Waterfront Committee. I made that clear to you folks. I believe that is a constitutional right. We cherish this pond as much as any other owner on this pond, and we would love nothing more than to continue to allow public access. So a lot of that, in terms of the discussion about public access and rights of way, I think is a moot point as far as I'm concerned. I can't speak for the other residents as far as I'm concerned. The concern that we have is that it is not a town public boat ramp. And the other residents are correct. It's a huge mooring field that folks are paying good money on. People are paying huge tax dollars. I've heard from you folks, Ed, I think Robo talked about paying a lot for taxes, has a dock, a waterfront, and not having a public boat ramp and not having access to a boat ramp in Mattoonic is an issue for him. We pay a lot of tax dollars too. We have about an acre of property here. We pay a lot of tax dollars, and it's all we can do for a family that is not wealthy and has not moved in here with enormous wealth to maintain that property. All we want is some peace of mind and some peace in our own backyard. we have no interest in eliminating public access. The problem is you have a dirt road that is single lane with residents that live on it. We have a duplex. I rent out half of that duplex, and folks are not willing to rent any longer because they're arguing with folks coming in and out of our property. There's been folks that have knocked fences down over and over again. There's fights there between somebody waiting to get into the Water Street, somebody down at the end leaving their massive vehicle and massive trailer and going home on their bike, coming back an hour and a half later via water with another one of their water sport items. It's become a nuisance is what's happened. And we cannot access or egress our property. I've heard you folks, you know, and my neighbors, you're my neighbors. I love this place as much as you do. I love this community as much as you do. I want to protect this community as much as you do. I propose to the Waterfront Advisory Committee and the Town Council that we seek funding. There's lots of funding out there. All these other communities around us have extraordinary boat ramps. We have boat ramps that can't be accessed on this side of Potter Pond because the bridge is too low. They redid the bridge, I don't know how many years ago. I think they made it lower. So we have an obligation. This is an enormous waterfront community, and we've got to put our money where our mouth is. If we say that that waterfront access is sacred and rights of way is sacred, I say let's make this a public right of way and make it sacred by making a public boat ramp where it's safe and legal. I have a 2-year-old grandson. They dart. I'm in my backyard. He darts towards the road and we're having heart failure. And please don't anybody say to me that we don't supervise our child, okay? He's closely supervised. He's 2 years old. He darts out and we have to worry about a trailer backing down a curved dirt roadway right abutting our property. There's two very distinct issues here. One is a public right of way. I never intended, and I made it very clear on record to both of these councils that I would defend to the death of me public access to shoreline. The other issue is legalities and safety and having an appropriate place for a boat ramp. It should be paved. We were told by you folks in the town council that that's not even deep enough over there. It needs to be a paved roadway. It needs to be a two-way roadway, and it needs not to be on a resident roadway. It's absurd to think that that is something that my community would fight for. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than I certainly wish that, well, two things. I want to also say, I appreciate the support from both the Waterfront Advisory Committee and the Town Council. I know that you waver back and forth depending on the interests of who you're talking to. You folks made it very clear to me that signs need to go up, you need to put a gate up, and you need to eliminate access. And we'll talk about the, getting a public boat ramp in the Matunic community later on. We don't know if we can, assert that kind of money for it. I told you I would spearhead it. I told you I would get the community together. I told you that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife are funding Charlestown, Narragansett, all around us. So let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's not speak out of both sides of our mouth and then not do anything but leave a community, struggling with public access. You're not supporting public access if you're not giving us a public legal boat ramp in this community. Obviously, no, I don't even want to say obviously. Let me just say this in terms of solutions, obviously, private road, not private road. I'm not even going to address that right now. I think that needs to be investigated. Yes, I've investigated it myself, but I'm not going to even go there because what we're talking about are two things: public access and public right of way and boat ramp. Public boat ramp needs to be elsewhere. I mean, I would ask any of you that live on the pond, any of you that live in the community, to imagine for just a second what it would be like to be a resident sitting there, trying to rent your property, trying to get up and down. I've heard folks talk about, what if there's an emergency and I need to take my boat out? I apologize if this sounds harsh, but really, you're worried about in an emergency getting your boat out. I'm worried about an emergency, your boat not being in the way of me and my family and my grandson getting out. I mean, let's be serious about what the safety issues are. I do think that there's certainly a place for compromise. We would love nothing more, and I would love nothing more than to address this as a community, to come together as a community instead of lambasting other neighbors and residents all around the place. I've never mentioned anyone's name. I have names. I know who causes most of the issues in this community with respect to this Water Street access. But please, please, let's show that we can be a strong, committed, come together, united kind of community, especially now. I even said it to the Waterfront Committee, and I said it to you folks at the Town Council. This is a crappy time to be addressing this, but we have to be safe too. And we have to be healthy too. And we deserve to enjoy our property peacefully, just the way all of you do. So I think that if we can, put down the axes, put down the disputes, and come together as a community, I welcome CRMC taking this over as a public right away. In terms of this being a permanent, long-term public boat ramp, no, it's just not feasible. I welcome any responses from any of you.
Well, first off, I want to thank you for calling in, Christine, again, and, offering to have a dialogue with your neighbors. I think that really is going to be very important in the interim before we get any input from CRMC that gives us more to go on. And so, my basic request of you and your neighbors is to work together. You probably know the folks who have the moorings out there, if you're amenable.
We do, and I'm gonna be honest with you folks. I know that you were making what you thought was an effort to support my concerns. You mentioned, well, you got to put signs up and put a gate up and this and that, and it's got to stop. You guys are legally liable. You told us. You got us, in a state of concern about that. And I'm not saying you did anything incorrectly. However, the sign that went up was outrageous, and I'm sorry. I'm not trying to target. I know it was done inadvertently, but if you hold sacred rights of way in waterways and access to shoreline in South Kingstown, who in their right mind would put no access to Potter Pond? That is absolutely positively not what our intention was. I have signs that say no public boat launch. That's what we had discussed, and that's what I thought was going to go up, to notify the public, not even to address doing anything to stop, but just to notify, so that the folks that come, put their boats in for the beginning of the season, take their boats in at the end of the season, that live on the property, on the pond, and in the community, come, put them in and go, but they're not without the extraordinary traffic this year especially. And instead, what went up was no public access, which I was outraged by, I'll be honest.
Thank you, Christine. I do want to let Deb, who has had her hand raised for some time again, speak, and I, to everybody who's communicated with us on this item, we do have to get to the rest of our business tonight, but know that we hear all the concerns, and we're going to try and help come to a good conclusion here. So if we can bring Devin for one last comment, that would be great.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments, and I'll make it very brief. First of all, I have a map here which I got from the South Kingston Town Hall, dated March 14th, 1927, recorded at 2:20 p.m. of the plat of Matunic Point Beach Club, property of S.H. Davis, and it includes Water Street, and everything. So, and that we are still in existence. Matuna Point Beach Club is still in existence. I just wanted to point that out because that was mentioned that the entity who filed these maps wasn't in existence anymore. There was one filed in 1923. I think it was called Matunic Meadows. Same map, basically, but it was under a different name. This one's called Plat of Matunic Point Beach Club, 1925, recorded 1927. And it's the same map, includes Water Street as part of that. So I just wanted to let you all know that that is a recorded document. Second, I heard all what Christine was saying, and my comment to that is she needs to read her deeds because I've researched them all, and her property does not include Water Street. It is bounded, specifically bounded by Water Street. And my second thing, my other comment is she always had her address is 990 Matunic Beach Road. There's 2 houses on that lot, a front house and the back house on the pond. There was always a driveway on the right-hand side of that property that went from Matunic Beach Road all the way down to her property. All of a sudden, she has a gravel driveway on Water Street. How did that happen? She did it, I don't know, I don't think any permits were pulled for that driveway. It is, like I said, it's clearly in violation of her CRMC dock permit from 2012 that clearly states nothing can be done within 200 feet of that, of water access. And like I said, they've removed a lot of stuff and they made a bend in the road. That Water Street used to be straight. Because they put that driveway in and haven't maintained some vegetation, now all their cars that are parked there is stick out into the middle of the road. So if you're putting a boat in, you have to you have to go around her stuff. That is another concern. She's concerned about her safety of her grandchild. Her access is Matunic Beach Road. Her address is Matunic Beach Road. The driveway was always from Matunic Beach Road and it went all the way back to her property.
She paid her taxes from.
So that's what I'm gonna say. I just wanted to make it that on record that, her concerns about that, her grandson and all the people coming down, she has another access point. It always was there. Historically, it's already was there. And the second thing was the plat. We are still in existence. Matunic Point Beach Club, we're still here. I pay my membership dues every year. And it's a recorded map. It's a repeat of the same map. So that's all. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you, Deb. And definitely, as I said before, provide all that information to CRMC. I think we'll take it from there. And in the meantime, it sounds like, Christine, I hope that we can have a constructive conversation. I don't know if I can be helpful in that regard, but I know Matunic's a great community to be a part of, lived there my whole life. So I trust that we can find a way. So thank you. What do we want to do with communication 8A?
This is Mike Urso. I suggest you refer it to the town administration because it will become part of whatever hearings we have when CRMC asks us for our opinion.
Great. It's Debbie Kelso. Thank you for that suggestion, Mike. That's what I will make a motion to do.
This is Bryant. I'll second that.
We have a motion from Deb, second from Bryant. Any further discussion? Do I see anyone opposed? Right, that motion carries. That brings us to 8G, resolutions adopted May 26th, 2020 by the Portsmouth Town Council in support of the continued appropriation of state and local revenues for public education, in support of funding of the high cost special education categorical fund, and in support of including transportation under the Every Student Succeeds Act in the non-public transportation categorical fund are received, placed on file. And what would we like to do? I certainly think that the transportation issue is one that we've talked about at length here at the council table. So it seems like something that we might support.
So I'll make the motion that we support the resolution from the Portsmouth Town Council.
Rory McEntee, I'll second that.
Motion from Deb, second from Rory. Further discussion? Do I see anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 9 on the agenda, comments from interested citizens. So this is, sure everybody on this call is probably used to comments from interested citizens from this point. Please raise your hand if you would like to be heard. If you are on your phone, hit *9, that will raise your hand. Maybe we got all talked out on the Matunic issue. Any comments from council members tonight?
Hey, well, this is Bryant. I do have a quick comment. It was actually a comment from a concerned citizen today that I actually went out and visited. 108 being a state road by where the Welcome House is located, and you're coming around the corner, there's a lot of excess vegetation growing there. The question is that private property? It might be, or is it town, or is it state property? But the problem with that is the fact with the vegetation, it's really hard to see coming around that corner. And this particular citizen is very concerned that it's an accident waiting to happen. So I was wondering if we could have someone look into it at the town level.
So Brian, where is that location again?
So like where Rodman Street comes out, or is it?
No, so like if you're coming from town towards from on 108 and you get to the intersection of where the Welcome House is like going to be diagonally.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't know the exact location, but it's like the corner of the Peacedale Mill, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a problem every year. Has been since I got here. It is private property, as I recall. We have been historically in communication with the owner over there.
All right, so if we could just confirm that, that'd be good, and whether or not we can, or they'll take care of it. It's not a big project, but it's definitely one that impedes visibility.
Yep, we'll follow up.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Public?
Just a question on the budget referendum. How I'm curious about the response for, hopefully we're getting a lot of response for ballot applications.
Tons of them.
Okay.
Tons of them.
Good. I just, would rather see people file them via the mail instead of going to the rec center on July 14th. So just wanted to check in and see how that was going.
Yeah. Well, we will be prepared for both.
I know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one additional comment regarding that, Deb. I do hope that people utilize the mail-in ballots, but I want to say that the town and the clerk's office did a really good job at the last election at the rec center. It was simple, it was easy. There was a lot of distance between folks. And I was one of the people that unfortunately didn't do a mail ballot, but I felt that it was very safe and easy to get into and out of in a safe manner.
I'd expect nothing less, Bryant. Good to hear, but I really would like to keep the crowd down just to make sure everybody's safety is paramount.
Thank you, Bryant.
And any other comments? All right, very good. That brings us to item 10, the town manager's report.
So I'm going to keep this very short. And in fact, I'm only going to touch on 2 items that we've already talked about. I do want to, for the record, let everyone know that Bob Kavanaugh, resident, reached out to me today, and I spoke to him about the issue on Water Street as well. He asked me to mention that to folks. So that is a fact. He spoke to me today about this. And then I do want to reiterate that Carol McEntee has been successful in getting the municipal court legislation through the state legislature. The bill has been referred to the governor, and we're hoping to have that the authority to start setting up a municipal court soon, which is very good news. Beyond that, really, we've had enough sort of interim meetings that I think the council is aware of our goings on. So I will close the manager's report.
We'll just note that we need legislation passed on both sides. So I should also thank Senator Sosnowski for helping.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Very good. That brings us to item 11, appointments.
I'll make a motion to have a resolution appointing Susan Axelrod to the planning board. I feel like her experience is well fit to, go right into the planning board and have an immediate effect. I feel like she had some good ideas that she presented to us in regard to affordable housing in particular. And in my opinion, I think we should fill the vacancy that was a woman's position with another woman. And I was impressed with her in the interview process. So I support her for this position.
This is Brian DeCruz. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Rory, second by Bryant. Discussion.
So I just, this is Debbie Kelso. I have just something to say, and we had 4 really great candidates before us tonight. I think this is a very difficult decision to choose one over the other. I agree with you that Ms. Axelrod was an impressive candidate. I think the other 3 were as well. I'd be happy to support her because I could support any one of the 4.
Joe Veely, I'll just make a couple of comments. I agree. Obviously, very good candidates, good interviews. I would have preferred to put Mr. Thomas on, frankly, because I think having another business owner on that planning board would be helpful to bring it into more balance. And certainly the fact that he is a commercial property owner, I think has some weight to it as well. But again, I've never said no to anybody who came forward, and there's support for Ms. Axelrod, and I certainly could get behind her support. I think in the future, we need to look at the balance of that committee, that board. But again, 4 very good candidates, and I could support any of them. And the resolution is on Susan, and I would certainly support it. Thank you.
Joe. I agree with everybody. I think we had a lot of great candidates for this position. Susan, great candidate. Happy to support her. And I agree. It makes sense to, put somebody in Elise Torello's spot who is similar, because I actually happen to think that the planning board has a pretty good balance. I don't know if there's any other comments, but if not, is there anyone opposed? All right, and that motion carries. That brings us to...
Can I give you a couple of reappointments?
Oh, are there anything that we need to interview people for?
No, these are reappointments for people who are willing to serve another term. Do we want to interview?
I guess that's the question.
Okay.
If you want to bring them up, and I'm happy to reappoint folks. I feel like.
Right. To what boards are you looking to appoint?
So there's a reappointment for Mark Shearer on Waterfront Advisory. And if you want to interview, then we should do that as the next step. Right. And SK Partnership for Prevention, Erica Estes is willing to be reappointed. And again, if the council now has a policy that we interview reappointees, let's bring it to that next step then.
So I think if we're going to interview one reappointee, we need to interview all reappointees or discontinue that practice. We could also make the decision not to interview reappointees, but we did make the decision a couple of months ago to do this. And I think we owe it to ourselves and to this community to continue that practice.
I don't disagree. So my point for bringing it up is to get the next step.
So I think it's definitely true that, you know, we decided to have this policy change a couple months ago. It was before COVID struck. So I think the only thing I would say is that the interviewing process has gotten a little harder to manage expeditiously in these times.
So a suggestion would be not to.
I mean, just, I would say that there's a case to be made for not interviewing all the reappointments while we're stuck in, you know, this Zoom council.
So I think a fair solution, Abel, might be to continue their appointment, right, for a period, perhaps 3 months, until we can have a council meeting that allows 50 people in the room. Would that be something we could do with a committee, is continue someone's appointment, bring them in for an interview, you know, tell them, move the reappointment date forward.
I think Mike's going to say something.
This is Mike Ursola, Town Solicitor. So individuals on committees continue on their committees until their replacement is appointed, whether it be that individual. So there's really no need to do short term. They'll just continue to serve until you make a new appointment.
And this is Bryant. I would agree with Deb in terms of the interview process, because if you're a new person to the council, you may not even know who these people are that you're reappointing. And that's been something in the past that I've struggled with as well.
Yeah, and you know, we changed the policy for good reasons. I think it was smart. I'm just, you know, also dealing with the realities of the current circumstances make it difficult.
Yeah, and to Deb's point is Joe Veely again. Phase 3 may start next Monday. That start date is still up in the air, and phase 3 does increase the amount of people that can be in a room. People's comfort with that may not be there, but
right, and our capacity in that room, socially distanced, I don't know that number, but I can assure you it's decidedly less than what we generally see. So, you know, that may be a factor as well.
yeah. So to Mike's point, I think we could probably put this off till any decision till the next meeting.
I would be supportive of that. And maybe it's worth having a discussion item about when we are going to get back together in person meetings. I know that Providence tonight held a in-person budget meeting. So it is something that we at some point should talk about. Is that an executive action on your part, Rob? Or?
So we actually did a little experiment on Wednesday with the briefing for the budget. We had Marianne, Zach, and Linda and I all in council chambers. We were trying to figure out whether we could make the technology work and not have reverberation and that kind of thing. I think we can make this work. I think what we're going to end up with is council hybrid meetings where you all can get together. You can have, you know, key witnesses you need to have in the room, but the meeting will be conducted on Zoom with everybody sitting in front of their own laptop in council chambers. I think it can be done. I think the unpleasant thing about it is everybody's going to have an ear microphone or an ear phone in their ear in order to make it work.
Okay.
We're still trying to track down a better solution, but so far that's the best we've got.
A bigger room.
Hmm.
You know, if we use an auditorium or something, we probably would be in better shape. You know, the council chambers is confining, so You're muted, Rob.
We could certainly do council meetings at, you know, the auditorium at the high school or
Rec Center.
Could
The
we
rec
make
center.
this, I think we're gonna need a motion to make this a discussion item.
That's exactly what, either put it on for the next agenda or add it to the agenda this evening.
I'm okay waiting till next time to discuss it.
Okay. We'll move on to item 12B, resolution authorizing an award of bid to Liberty Chevrolet of Wakefield, Massachusetts for the purchase of one 2020 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 pickup truck in accordance with all bid specifications in the amount of $27,000, further described in a memo from the park superintendent to the town manager dated April 6th.
Joe Veely, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 12B.
Debbie Kelso, I'll second that.
Motion by Joe, second by Deb. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 12C is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Adkins Printing Company of New Britain, Connecticut for archival microfilming of land evidence records and maps, probate records, and town council minutes at the unit prices bid and in accordance with bid specifications for a period of 5 years commencing on July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2025. Further described in a memo from the town clerk to the town manager, June 15th.
This is Debbie Kelso. I'll make a motion to approve item 12C.
This is Bryant. I'll second.
Motion by Deb, second by Bryant. Any discussion? Any opposition? All right, that motion carries. That brings us to 12D, a resolution authorizing an amendment to the 2020 town beach policy to remove the established limit on the sale of resident season beach passes and further described in a memo from the Director of Leisure Services to the town manager dated June 16th.
I'll make a motion to approve item 12D.
Rory McEntee, I'll second that.
Motion by Bryant, second by Rory. Terry did join us. Anybody have any questions for her?
I think she should explain the reasoning behind this to us again and to the public.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Terry Murphy, Director of Leisure Services. As you know, when this policy was established back in May, first by the Recreation Commission and then by the Town Council, we were under certain circumstances where there were many unknowns in terms of what COVID-19 was going to present during the summer season. One of them being whether or not what the state was going to do with state beaches, what other local beaches were going to do. And in an abundance of caution, we recommended a policy that placed a cap on season passes for residents and eliminated the sale of season passes for non-residents. We've had now an opportunity for 4 weeks worth of beach weekends, especially this most recent weekend and the previous weekend, both where we had high activity at the town beach. What I would say is we have been able to, our staff has been able to very effectively manage the comings and goings at the beach since the state beaches opened. There has been some pressure released in terms of what we felt we could manage at our beach. We still have a cap placed on the capacity of the beach. We also must follow a COVID-19 control plan that's required by the state. There is a major effort in abiding by that control plan, which includes additional staff. We are actually counting heads. We are reminding everyone who comes on the beach that they must have a mask with them. We have signage all over the beach to ensure that people are following the rules that we have to abide by. If the state were to come and review our control plan, we need to show that we are keeping a capacity and allowing for social distancing on the beach. That being said, this past weekend was quite warm, very sunny. State beaches, I believe on Saturday, parking sold out at the state beaches. We did not have that issue at the town beach, although we were very busy. I feel comfortable knowing that there's other opportunities out there for people to go to the beach, that the South Kingstown Town Beach isn't going to be overwhelmed. We will be busier than normal, and we will not guarantee parking for a season sticker. That is part of the policy. It has always been part of the policy, but this season in particular, it will be a little more challenging for folks. So we do want people to understand that there is a possibility that they could come to the beach and be turned away because the lot is either full or the beach has reached the capacity head count that we've established as being safe for social distancing purposes. But we're comfortable at this point lifting that cap.
Thank you, Terry. Any other questions for Terry? All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 12F, a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Martone Service of Narragansett to rehabilitate and paint the exterior of Peacedale Library as specified within the bid in an amount not to exceed $98,000, including a contingency with funding appropriated from the Library Improvement Fund through a Champlin Foundation grant, further detailed in a memo from the facilities superintendent to the town manager dated June 15th.
This is Bryant. I'll make a motion that we approve item 12F.
Joe Veely, I'll make a second with a comment. I appreciate that this is done with grant money, so it's not a cost to the taxpayers, but I was pretty surprised about the cost. But it's not an easy job, but I just wouldn't have expected a cost that high. Again, it's not on the taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Is anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. 12G is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a 3-year extension of the privatized operations contract for the Rose Hill Regional Transfer Station with Waste Connections of Seekonk, Massachusetts, further detailed in a memo from the Public Services Director of the town manager dated June 15th.
Joe Veely, I'll make a motion to approve 12G.
Second.
Motion by Joe, second by Deb. Any discussion?
Sure. Joe Veely, I will say that the conditions from 3 years ago are so dramatically improved over what they were. It's just a much more efficiently run and clean operation.
Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure to go to the dump.
One of my favorite activities. Always leaves you with a good feeling.
This is, I agree. It's like Disneyland now for the regular consumer, but I also think based off of some of the commercial people, that there's still improvements to be made there as well for them.
Can always do better. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. And that brings us to I, a resolution formally adopting the employee benefits provided to non-union personnel as presented by the Town Council's FY 2020-2021 budget adopted April 27th, 2020, including the position allocation to pay schedule, the grade and step schedule, longevity, and healthcare benefits effective July 1st, 2020, and additional employee benefits provided to non-union personnel as described in the non-union employee benefits summary, July 1st, 2020, further described in a memo from the Director of Administrative Services to the Town Manager dated June 16th.
Mr. President, it's Debbie Kelso. I'm going to recuse myself from this question. I have a family member who's directly impacted.
Thank you.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 12I.
Joe Veely, I'll make a second with a comment. This is a routine annual thing that we do. Typically, non-union employees are typically compensated and their benefits package typically mirrors the union contracts. And I believe that's the case here. I just couldn't get to the memo, but I remember seeing it earlier. So that's my only comment.
Thank you, Joe. So we have a motion by Rory, second by Joe. Further discussion? All right. I guess we'll do this one as a roll call since we have recusal. Deb, if you wouldn't mind just saying that you recuse when we get to you.
Okay, Council President Collins,
Aye.
Council Vice President De Cruz,
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Recused.
Councilman McEntee,
Aye.
Councilman Veely.
Aye.
There you are. Okay, the motion carries 4-0 with Councilwoman Kelso recusing.
Thank you. Item J is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Tasca Ford of Berlin, Connecticut for 4 2021 Ford Utility Police Interceptor vehicles in an amount not to exceed $138,000, including contingency, equipment transfer, installation, and trade-in allowance, and 1 2021 Ford F-150 4x4 crew cab pickup truck in an amount not to exceed $32,000, including contingency, equipment transfer, installation, and trade-in allowance. Further described in a memo from the police chief to the town manager dated June 18th.
This is Bryant. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 12J.
Joe Veely with a second, and could I request, Bryant, that you combine J and K? They're both police vehicles.
Sure. I'll revise my motion to include items 12J and 12K.
So second by Joe Veely. Just with a comment to Rob, in the past, we've held back some police vehicles to be used as detail vehicles. We've learned, I guess, that we can make much more money than the trade-in allowance on a vehicle that isn't, on frontline duty. So that's my only comment. I just trust that we're keeping enough back we get pretty low trade-in value, but we know we make a lot of money with them on detail.
Chief, this is Rob Zarnetsky. Chief, is there any information you'd like to provide the council on that point?
Yes, we are holding back one vehicle, but that would be for the K9 project. So the rest of the vehicles, I believe we're all set. I haven't heard anything from any of the detail officers that we need any more cars. We seem to be doing okay.
Great.
Putting those cars out there, and they're still running okay.
Not surprised.
So,
thank you.
yeah, so the only one we're holding back is the vehicle for the K9.
Great.
And other than that, we're pretty well set. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Items J and K, any further comments? Is there anyone opposed? Very good. Those motions carry unanimously. Item L is a resolution authorizing expenditures to ensure continuation of operations prior to the final approval of the town budget as follows. Whereas final approval of the town budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 has been delayed pending the outcome of the budget referendum that will be held on July 14th, 2020. And whereas section 4228 of the town charter provides, if for any reason the operating budget of the town has not been approved by the beginning of the fiscal year for which it was submitted, the council may authorize all town departments and agencies to make expenditures necessary to continue operation for 1 month, provided that such expenditures total no more than the expenditures of the same department or agency in the corresponding month of the previous fiscal year, together with the amount of any increase in debt obligations or contractual obligations. And whereas the town council wishes to continue to provide uninterrupted public services to the citizens and residents of South Kingstown, now therefore be it resolved that the town manager and all town departments and agencies are authorized to make expenditures necessary to continue operations until July 31st, 2020, or until the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget is approved by the voters, whichever shall occur sooner. provided that such expenditures total no more than the expenditures of the same department or agency in the month of July 2019, together with the amount of any increase in debt obligations and contractual obligations.
This is Bryant. I'll make a motion to approve item 12L.
Joe Veely, second.
Second.
Say motion by Bryant, second by Joe on that one. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. 12M is a resolution authorizing the abatement of uncollectible, tangible / personal property taxes for 2009 in the amount of $3,105.48 and uncollectible motor vehicle taxes for 2009 in the amount of $12,495.36 for a combined total of uncollectible taxes in the amount of $15,600.84 and further described in a memo from the finance director to the town manager dated June 17th.
Joe Veely, motion to approve 12M.
Debbie Kelso, second.
We have a motion by Joe, second by Deb. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. 12N is a resolution authorizing tax collection procedures as shown on Exhibit 2 attached to the agenda.
Mr. President, this is Rob Zarnetsky. The procedures that we've put before you tonight are slightly different than the procedures we've always had before the council in prior years. As the council will recall, we've heard over the last several years, and particularly this year with COVID-19 impacting people's ability or concern about their ability to make timely payments on their tax bills, that the 10 business day grace period is confusing and not particularly helpful. What we're proposing with this set of tax collection procedures is that the 10 business day grace period be extended to the entire length of the month. So you have the month in which the bill is due to make the payment. So if it is a May payment, you would have until June 1st, actually May 31st, to make the payment. So we've extended the grace period, if you will, from 10 business days to essentially 30 calendar days, although it is within the month that the bill is due. So if it's February, it's actually not 30 days.
Understood. Do I hear a motion on N?
Rory McIntyre, I'll make a motion to approve 12N.
Joe Veely with a second. I think that this is probably going to be helpful to a lot of people, and I don't think it puts the town at a dramatic risk here. It just gives a little more time under these conditions.
Agree. So we have a motion by Rory, second by Joe. Any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item O is a resolution authorizing fund transfers from categories of expenditures in the FY 2019-2020 General Fund 101 to reserve funds as determined by the finance director and the town manager, and as further described in a memorandum from the finance director to the town manager dated June 18th, 2020, and entitled Year-End Reserve Fund Transfers. Further resolved that the town finance director, with the advice and consent of the town council, is hereby permitted to invest the funds at any time in said savings accounts or certificates of deposit or commercial or savings banks or trust companies or in obligations of the United States or its agencies or in any other short-term investment as would be made by prudent persons of discretion and intelligence. Further resolved that the town council is hereby authorized to use the total funds or such part thereof of said reserve funds for capital expenditures as may be voted by the town council.
Mr. President, this is Rob Zarnetsky. I would ask that the council amend this resolution, striking the reference to the memorandum from the finance director to the town manager and inserting reference to the memorandum from the town manager to the town council dated June 22nd, 2020. Unfortunately, our finance director has been busy out recruiting a new golf partner that he's going to have to train up and was not able to get that memo in today. So you've got a memo from me covering our discussions.
Do I hear such a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 12-0 with the amendments as mentioned by the town manager.
Second.
Motion by Roy, second by Deb. Any discussion? Anyone opposed?
This is Bryant. Robert, I don't think I saw that memo.
It was sent this afternoon. You should check your email. Essentially, and just for the council's awareness, we are anticipating a surplus this year in the neighborhood of about $410,000, which is substantially off what we had for a surplus last year. Last year's surplus was $1.2 million and some change. Our results in investments are not what they were last year, and we were better at making sure that we were covering full expenses this year with our accounts. So we're down to about $410,000, 400 plus. The memorandum recommends that the monies be put to the OPEB account, which would allow us to fully fund what we had anticipated being the contributions for other post-employment benefits. And we are not recommending any other transfers because that's going to essentially take all that we've got.
Thank you.
All right, we have motion, we have second. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, in that case, that motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. I hear a motion to adjourn.
Joe Veely, motion to adjourn.
Debbie Kelso, second.
Motion by Joe, second by Deb. Any discussion?
Congratulations, Deb.
Congratulations to Zach and my daughter Carrie had their first child at 5:30 this evening. So that's why the finance director has a long way to go with that golf partner. Healthy baby boy, healthy baby boy.
Very good. All right, well, we have a motion, we have a second. I see no opposition. This meeting is adjourned at 10:20. And thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.